going to score. Mason win. Luken Baker with a big pinch hit.
Comes up big again. That is 6 games in a row now. A streak of an RBI for Luken Baker.
How about it? You love to see it last night. That's how the Cardinals won it. Luken Baker coming through in the clutch once again with a pinch hit with Alex and T-Bone, who is back off of vacation. I'm Brandon Kiley. The boys are reunited, and it feels so good. For 2 days, 2 strong days for the 3 of us to be in studio together.
Next time.
Who do you think? I will be out on Monday.
Shocker.
The guys will be at the Blues luncheon together. They'll be bringing you some fantastic interviews, including a bunch of Blues people, potentially a WWE superstar. We'll see. We'll see what comes your way.
Blues people.
Yeah, well, not players. So that's coming up on Monday. But right now, we got to talk about the St. Louis Cardinals. Luken Baker is coming through, and he's proving his value to this team. It is a shame, honestly, that it took as long as it did to get him up to the big leagues. Talking to people around the Cardinals or in mid-July, late July, when a lot of the fans were asking for Luken Baker, the response that I got was generally, no. Like a very dismissive no. And now you look back at it and you're like, man, this guy could have helped them. I don't know if Luken Baker is ever going to be a consistent starter in Major League Baseball. I don't know about that. But last night you saw what he can be, which is a really nice right-handed option coming off of the bench. And let me rack my brain around this, think back to like early June, maybe July. Could the Cardinals have used somebody that is a right-handed bat that hits well against left-handed pitching?
Didn't 4 weeks ago Pages hit with runners in scoring position and they lost the game?
Yeah, I feel like that maybe would have helped them out at some point earlier than he arrived, and yet here he is. They are finally getting to that place now. Alex, what do you make of what we're seeing right now from Luken Baker and what we're seeing, frankly, from the St. Louis Cardinals?
Yeah, well, I mean, on the Luken Baker front, I think it just gets more and more irritating when you see him come through in big moments, specifically as a pinch hitter, because you're thinking, man, what could have been? The Cardinals used to live off of that devil magic where they'd find a guy who could come up for a month or two and provide a spark. And, man, watching Luken Baker perform off of the bench, that part feels most important for the Cardinals because they've had multiple situations with runners in scoring position where they've just stuck with the bottom of their batting order because there was nobody on the bench that could take that at bat. So let's just see what Pages or Ciani can do. And at times they've come through. But man, I couldn't help think every time Luken Baker over this last week we've seen him do this, couldn't help think of what Matt Adams used to do. And not the Matt Adams that was the starting first baseman, the Matt Adams on the back end of his time in St. Louis that was the bench bat. Because as a pinch hitter, it always felt like Matt Adams, if you brought him to the plate, he was going to come through with an at-bat. And I looked at this last night. I did a BK deep dive because I was thinking, hey, Matt Adams, right?
Okay.
What did this guy do? So 2012 to 2017, BK. He hit 288 as a pinch hitter with a 513 slug and an OPS over 800. It was 16 total extra base hits. And then you look in the past years since 2017 when Matt Adams was gone, they had one option off of the bench that was better than 700 OPS as a pinch hitter. And now you're talking about Luken Baker, who, look, this number's not going to stick, guys. He's at 1,400 OPS.
I think it will.
Not going to stay. But, the next best option that this Cardinals team has off of the bench is Matt Carpenter. So I watched Luken Baker do that last night, and it's like, man, could you have gotten 5 more wins and put yourself in a little bit more of a comfortable position if you had a little bit more of a threat off of the bench? And right now, Luken Baker looks like a weapon that they should utilize next season. Not as a starter, not as an everyday at-bat, but as somebody who could come in and hit the ball in a big moment.
So I think about the way this team wants to play. In theory, how does this team play? How do they deploy their lineup? What do they do? And I think Ollie Marmol wants to manage this way. How many times did he say post-game yesterday, man, that was a really fun game. You look at the way that we went about it, all of the different decisions that we had to make. It was just a really fun game. I think Ollie prefers to manage the style of game that you saw yesterday than okay, here's our starting 9. They're going to leave. They're going to just sit in the field all day. That's it. I don't do anything. I sit over here, and our players go do their thing, right? He liked deploying guys the way that he did yesterday. But he hasn't had the players to do that with very often over the last couple of years. For a brief period of time in 2022, that was Albert Pujols, right? Big spot. All right, here comes our Hulk. Good luck. This is the spot we're deploying our big guns here, right? And it's Albert Pujols. He comes in against a lefty, typically ends up getting a hit, and boom, everybody celebrates. It was great. Since then, though, you really haven't had that guy. for like a day, you had Tommy Pham to be able to be in that role. And now you're starting to see it emerge once again with Luken Baker. And guys, this is why I always say, like, it's not as important to me as it seems to be to the Cardinals that every single young player comes up and immediately has an everyday spot in the lineup. Hey, man, Luken Baker, you want to make a really good living for the next 5 years? Because there's a way you can do it. But it's not as an everyday first baseman. It's probably in this role that you're currently maintaining. Be a great dude in the clubhouse. And when you get your opportunities late in a game against a dude that throws 100 with a slider from hell, hit it. And if you could do that once out of every, like, 4 times or so, and you hit it with authority when you hit it, you're going to have a 5 to 7 year career in the big leagues. You're going to make like $10 million in the big leagues. It's a really nice career.
And you never have to go back to AAA and ride the bus in Memphis.
Luken Baker can have that role. Hey, Thomas Sajaci, you want to roll in the big leagues? Because here's what it's probably going to be long term. It'll be a utility infielder. You might even play a little bit in the outfield. You're going to be a guy that plays second base, third base, occasionally, very occasionally shortstop, and maybe some left field. And when you do that, you get your opportunities, show you can hit a little bit, maybe you can earn a better role. This is something that frustrates me to no end about the Cardinals is that they could have had these roles for Luken Baker and for Thomas Sajaci, guys like this earlier in the season. And instead of our next segment being like, are you squinting? Are you tilting your head a little bit and maybe seeing the fact that the Cardinals can have an opportunity to get into the playoffs? Maybe they could have given themselves a better shot. I don't think their roster decisions earlier this year have really allowed for that.
So let me ask you guys this. Is an 800 OPS outlandish to ask for a pinch hitter?
Is it what?
Outlandish to ask for a pinch hitter for an entire season. Like as a pinch hitter somewhere around 750, 800 OPS.
750 seems reasonable.
Yeah,
okay. 800 feels a little aggressive.
When was the last time the Cardinals had 3 or more guys that had a 750 or higher OPS as a pinch hitter?
I have no idea.
This was my deep dive last night.
I can't imagine, like 2013?
Yeah, it was probably that team that had like Alan Craig, who was like the whole.
No, it was 2019. Listen to these guys' names.
Carpenter was one.
I
think Jose Martinez was.
Nope.
No, that would have been 18.
Yeah. Lane Thomas. Lane Thomas had an 1,000 OPS as a pinch hitter.
How many at-bats are we talking about here?
This was more than 10 at-bats.
Okay.
Yeah, over 10 at-bats. And then the third one was my boy Ravioli, Rangel Ravello.
Really?
Yeah. That was the last time, though. Every year since then, it's been one guy, and then the next player was 700 or below OPS as a pinch hitter. Yeah, and those are 3 guys that you mentioned, Baker, Donovan, and Sajaci. Now, we don't know what Sajaci is, but if you had 3 guys who could be effective off of the bench, welcome to Ollie having more toys to play with.
From the 314 and 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Said, guys, BK is now mad that we're winning. I'm not at all mad. I so much prefer watching this style of baseball. It is so much more fun for me. Man, it's better for our mental health on this show to watch a team that is doing better. Because when they lose every night and they play a boring and bad brand of baseball, I promise you, we are enjoying that every bit as much, or as little, I suppose, as you guys are. Because we have to talk about it. We're paid to watch it, and so I guess that helps. It makes it a little better that there's like a paycheck coming in.
2 days off away from it.
But it is not enjoyable to watch a team that just looks sluggish. And lately, they've looked like an inspired baseball team. I so much prefer this. My frustration is that it took this long to get here. My frustration is that they had that series in Cincinnati where it became the equivalent for the Cardinals what the Sharks game was for the St. Louis Blues last year, where you watched that game and said to yourself, all right, well, they're done. Like, they'll probably make it interesting down the stretch, but they're done. And we all knew it then, and it ended up being true. And for the Cardinals, it felt that way as well. You left that Red series in Cincinnati, and we all said it on the radio the next day. We said, they're done. It's over. Like, they can try to make it interesting the rest of the way. Maybe they go on a little bit of a hot streak, but it's over. And that's essentially where they're at right now. So I wish they had played a little better. Not great baseball, just a little better against the Cubs, the Pirates, and the Reds coming out of the All-Star break. And if they did, dude, we'd be talking about a team that is right there right now, neck and neck with the Mets and the Braves for that final wild card spot.
And the hard part for the Cardinals is you just needed one of those series. One of those series, and you're probably talking about at least being comfortable with it, and there still is a realistic opportunity. Like, you control your own destiny if you win one of those series. But now even after what you've just done, it doesn't feel like you control your own destiny. You could go on some torrid pace down the stretch, but you're still going to have to ask for a massive collapse from another team.
He's Alex Ferrario. That is Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys want to get involved in the show, the Air Comfort Service text line is the easiest place to do so. 314-399-9646 is the number for that. You always can watch us on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/101ESPN-STL. The studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. Coming up next, we will talk a little big picture about the Cardinals. Are you leaving the light on for them? Are you still saying, you know what? I don't know. I'm going to leave open the opportunity that they could come back 5.5 games back in the wild card standings right now of the Atlanta Braves. They do have a schedule that opens up a bit. They just went 11-8 against these contenders. Are you leaving the light on for the Cardinals? Want to hear from you. We'll give you our thoughts on that coming up next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So are you still leaving the light on for the Cardinals? Are you saying, you know what? They might come home tonight. Maybe. Maybe. Or are you ready to be done with this season? That's what we're asking here on BK and Ferrario. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Alex, I've been basically done since the Cincinnati series. We all kind of declared them dead. We've just been waiting to have our funeral for the 2024 Cardinals, and then they went on this stretch where they were playing against quality teams. And I was like, okay, it'll probably come at some point against one of the Dodgers, Brewers, Twins, Padres, or Yankees. And then it just never did. And they kept winning series, and they played, generally speaking, pretty good baseball over the course of that stretch. And so now you're 2 games above 500. You're technically still alive for the postseason. Are you leaving the light on for them, or are you just completely out?
No, I'm not leaving the light on. I'm not leaving the light on because I don't want to put my heart out there again. That hurts too much. You know, T-Bone, you've been there before.
I haven't been, but I'll take your word on it.
It's too hard to look at the landscape of where the National League wildcard race is and sit there and actually believe, like, hey, they're going to be back into this thing. And I know years past they've done this before, but like with Atlanta, and I mean, just Atlanta, the Mets, and the Cubs, from the pace that they've gone on, I mean, you're talking if they just go 500 down the stretch, you're going to have to win 15 or 16 games to get into a playoff spot. And that's rough math for me, but with 22 games, I mean, what we just saw was the Cardinals go 11-8, a couple of games above 500. I mean, we're talking them having to go 7 or 8 games above 500, and the other teams to play 500 or worse to be in there. So I'm not leaving the light on because I don't believe the playoffs is an actual thing. But the optimism of hopefully next season, seeing all of these younger guys have success in Lars Nootbaar and Mason Wynn and Luken Baker, that part of it still gets you excited for the rest of the season to see what it is. But it's hard to keep the light on for postseason when you see the Braves, Mets, and the Cubs where they're at and where you're at.
Yeah, I'm going to save on my electric bill this month and not leave the light on for the St. Louis Cardinals because you're right. They've left their fate in the hands of all these other teams, and that is the worst possible place to be at. You know, that's why we talk about that Reds, that Cubs, that Pirates stretch was they were in a playoff spot at that point, or like right there on the fringe looking at it at least. And as long as you can kind of keep things, you always hear the team say, you know, we just got to focus on our business, take care of your business. Well, if you can just focus on that and not have to rely on 3 teams falling apart above you, and not only just like falling apart, they have to truly fall apart. You're 5.5 back. It's not like it's one game. You know, if it's one game back, you're in the driver's seat a little bit. You put a little bit of the pressure on. You're off in the distance in the rearview mirror for the Atlanta Braves. They're not worried about you. They're more worried about the Cubs than they are about you and the New York Mets. So, no, I am not leaving the light on for the St. Louis Cardinals because I just think they put themselves in the spot and it's too far back.
I'm with you. We got a text that said, guys, they're 11-8 in this stretch of games. Let's not act like they're playing some unbelievable baseball. Let's be fair about who they're playing. Like, if you went 11-8 in October against the same caliber of teams, because this is the caliber of team that you're going to play in October, you'd be going to the World Series. Like, this is all it takes. You just got to be 1 game above 500 in each series that you play. And that's basically what they've averaged out over the last 19 games. If you had told me going into this that the Cardinals would play 3 games above 500 against this caliber of opponent, I would have said I have a lot of questions as to how they did that, given what we had seen prior to this stretch of 19 games. And now things open up. Seattle, Cincinnati, Toronto, Pittsburgh. Cleveland is a really good team, but then Colorado, and you finish out against San Francisco, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. My computer just died on me.
Yeah.
That's not the same caliber of team that you've been going up against. So if you play the same level of ball that you did against those really good teams, against these lesser teams, you should go. I mean, if you went in a 19-game stretch and played the same caliber of baseball, I would say you go like 14-5, probably, because you're just going up against lesser competition. So I think what they did is they gave themselves a chance. Unfortunately, they had already ruined their opportunity with what they had done against the Reds, the Pirates, and the Cubs coming out of the break. That was it. Those 3 series against the Central Division foes that are in or around the same area that you're at in this division, that's where you lost this thing, man. Your final 22 games, in order to get into the wild card spot, you'd probably have to win like 16 of them, 15 of them maybe. I think that's probably what you're looking at. Probably because you don't have the tiebreaker against the Mets, I bet you got to win 16 of your final 22 games, 16-6 down the stretch.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys tell me if you disagree with this. I don't think this team's capable of that.
No, I don't either. And I'll go back to like how the Cubs put themselves into this position and how the Mets put themselves into this position because they're ahead of you. I mean, the Mets are in the middle of a 7-game win streak right now. The Cubs went on a 6-game win streak before they lost a couple of games. What's the longest win streak we've seen for this Cardinals team this season? 4 games, if I'm not mistaken. Was it 5? I mean, and that was back in June Like, we're not talking about a team that just put together 5 or 6 wins. We're talking about a team that, yes, they win 11-8. They won a game, they'd lose a game. They'd win 2, they'd lose a game. We're a little bit above 500 baseball. You are going to have to do something that you have not done this season. Does the schedule allow you to do that? Absolutely. But on the flip side of that coin, what makes me believe that going up against the Cincinnati Reds or going up against the San Francisco Giants or these teams that are supposed to be lesser than you, that you have a better chance to beat those teams? For some reason, this Cardinals team takes their game to the next level when they see the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Brewers, the Yankees on their schedule. But when it's the Reds, the Pirates, the Nationals, or the Marlins, things drop down a little bit more.
It's a totally fair point. It's something that I try to push back against, but at this point, it's kind of hard for me too. The Cardinals do kind of play up or down to their competition.
Yeah, they do. Sounds like another St. Louis team.
I don't understand why that's the case. They're not good enough to do that. This is not like the Padres at times in the past, I think, have been a team that is justifiably criticized for playing up or down to their competition. Go up against the Dodgers, it's like hot damn. Those series feel like they're a World Series every time those two teams play. But then they play against like the Rockies. It's like, dude, did you lose 2 out of 3 against Colorado? Like, what? You guys okay? What's going on out there in San Diego?
Lose to that team?
Like, can you explain a little bit about why you are the way that you are? But that's the Padres. You look at the talent on that team, and it's a little dissimilar from what we watch on a night-to-night basis here in St. Louis. You're not good enough to get away with this. So they got to take care of business. And listen, man, if they win like 8 of their next 9 games and they get on a hot streak and they do that against Seattle, Cincinnati, Toronto, and they put themselves in position to where the last 10 games of the season is interesting, I'd love to see it. It'd be a lot of fun. I just don't.
You know what the best part about electricity is, BK? I pay the bill, so I can flip the light on whenever I want. Doesn't mean I have to flip it on now. Just
final thing here. What's the value in finishing strong this year? Because
for this team, not good value.
I could see it both ways, and I'm curious your guys' side on this. On one side, you avoid having consecutive losing seasons for the first time since the 1950s. I would assume the organization would like to avoid that. It's probably that headline. Like, you'll see the headline in the Post-Dispatch if they end up 80 and 82. Cardinals, for first time since the 1950s, have back-to-back losing seasons on their resume.
Front office high five and be like, hell yeah, guys.
They don't want that. Nobody should want that. But if you're a fan, I can understand why you would look at that and be like, I want that headline to smack this team in the face and say, it's not good and it needs to get better. And until you guys make real tangible changes, nothing is going to get better here. So I understand a fan looking at that and saying that's the best thing for this team, even if it hurts in the moment. But also on the other side, like, finishing strong would indicate that some of these players that you have that you're probably going to see a lot of next season performed well. And that's a good thing for the organization and for fans. So where do you fall on this, Alex?
I mean, I fall on what's happened over these last couple of years, minus last season. The Cardinals always seem to, if they have a good final stretch, they look at it and say, well, if we can figure out how to do that in the first couple of months of the season, then we're right back into the playoffs. And so let's just put this roster back out there. Like, it never feels like they, quote unquote, learned their lesson after something that happens from the start to the finish of the season. It's always that short sample size. And what worries me, not so much on the offensive side, because I think all of the pieces offensively, they're not going to deter you away from using the younger guys. At least you hope, because all these players that are helping you do this at the end are putting you in the spot. I think it's the pitching side that worries me a little bit about it, because what is going to happen is Steven Matz is going to pitch well.
Have you seen the new thing? Hey, he's got a curveball.
I did see that today.
We do this all the time.
He's got a curveball now.
And when Lance Lynn comes back, the velocity is going to be uptick a couple of miles an hour and be like, oh, man, what did he figure out?
Dude, Steven Matz went out there, threw like 4 good, solid innings, and they were like, curveball.
Yep.
He's got a curveball.
We've done this before. It worries me on the pitching front, especially after we saw McGreevy, especially with Graceffo, and now with Andre Palante. You're going to see Matz and Lance Lynn and be like, well, we got to run it back with these guys, right? No. Especially Steven Matz. Like, look, he's a starter. When all you need to do is just lean into it and say, hey, Steven, awesome. Do that in the bullpen next year. I want them to learn from what this entire season was and say, we can't do this again. Let's initiate some of these younger guys into a spot and have the veterans help that.
And that's why, like, I agree. I want to say, like, hey, they probably should finish below 500 so they will learn more lessons. Problem is they finished like 20 games below 500 last year, and they still didn't learn enough lessons. They kind of ran back with the same thing, which we talked about when they signed Gibson. They signed Lance.
Actually, they doubled down. They spent money on it.
I know, and they kept Steven Matz in the rotation when we said, hey, that's probably a bullpen arm.
Palante might work.
And then they came up with this weird excuse of like leadership was the reason we were joining games below 500. No, you like this thing called talent. I want so badly for them to learn the right lessons. My fear is, though, even if they finish below 500, though, that they won't get to that point where they need to, because it's going to be the same regime that's going to be running things again next season.
Especially, as a matter of fact, it feels like because they've talked so much about cutting payroll and cutting some of the money and being a little cheaper next season, it feels like it a little like the Blues last season, where it's like, man, this is not good what you're doing right now, because you just missed out on an opportunity to potentially get a better piece that could help you down the stretch. And if you do finish 3 games out of a playoff spot and you're cutting salary and you're really not going to learn many lessons, well, you just missed out on potentially something that could have helped you.
Yeah. Cardinals right now, by the way, I remember recently we talked about where they were at in the draft standings, the lottery odds. And it was like, oh, wow, they're like a few games back of a top 5
they're screwing this
lottery
up.
odds.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Ethan Holiday.
You know where they're at right now?
Oh, God, they're going to be
I'm going to say like 10?
12th.
16.
Oh, see, this is so the Blues. That's not the lottery, correct?
That's the lottery.
Oh, it's still in the lottery?
Well, I mean, technically, you have a 0.65% chance of winning the lottery.
Never.
Hey, I think Cleveland won
I
the
was going to
first
say, the
pick.
Guardians got that.
Never
so
tell me the odds.
It's not a complete no, but they are,
They are
one and a
such
half.
the Blues.
They're one and a
They
half
are.
games back of Tampa Bay right now, who is currently in the 12th slot.
But if they're the Blues, look
3
how,
games back of San Francisco for the 9th
look
slot.
how excited we are for the upcoming Blues season. So if they are the Blues, next year might be good for the Cardinals.
It's possible if they make significant changes and like change everything about the organization, put in place
Still go find their
a
Broberg.
transition plan. If they do all of those different things and are super aggressive and make it very clear to the audience as to what the plan is.
Oh, yeah, man. High
long-term,
five.
like, yeah,
Cardinals
yeah,
are back next year.
We got
Yeah.
this. Hey, don't you worry. I will absolutely convince myself by April 1st of 2025 that the Cardinals are back. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into questions and answers. But next, have the Chiefs become the villains of the NFL? And is that a good thing for the league long term? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Terry Herrick's Day Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals beat the Brewers last night 3-2 as they take 2 of 3 from Milwaukee. They are off today before they'll be back in action for a 3-game weekend set at home against the Seattle Mariners. And the NFL season gets underway tonight, and you can hear the opening game here on 101 ESPN as the Baltimore Ravens take on the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
The Chiefs are back in action tonight. They're taking on the Baltimore Ravens. Pre-game coverage for that game starts on 101 ESPN tonight at 6:30. It's the opening game of the season. And Alex, they're doing this because, of course, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl yet again. They're going for a three-peat this year, something that no team has done in the Super Bowl era. They have a chance, again, to restate this, to do something this season that the New England Patriots were never able to accomplish during their unbelievable 20-year reign of supremacy over the NFL.
If you repeat it again, you're just going to support the segment that we're about to do.
The Kansas City Chiefs,
oh, son of a, come on, man,
this season could establish themselves as the greatest dynasty in the history of the NFL. And they will do so by winning 3 consecutive Super Bowls. Once again, something that no team, Alex, no team in the league's history has ever done.
It's actually kind of pissing me off that you're doing this again.
And Alex, earlier today we were talking about it and we were thinking about, okay, what does this mean? What, big picture wise, what does this mean for the league, for the Chiefs, for their legacy, whatever? And T-Bone said, you know, I was thinking about this, and a lot of people in my life don't really like the Chiefs.
Me included.
And I think they have become for the NFL what the Patriots were for the league, what the Yankees have been at times in their history for Major League Baseball, and what I think every league at its best has, and that is a villain. You need somebody that can galvanize other franchises, other fan bases that are not a fan of that team to root against. Everybody tonight that is not a Chiefs fan for the most part will be rooting against the Chiefs against the Ravens. And it's not because they're big Lamar Jackson fans. It's because they don't want to see that damn team win again. And I think that becomes a good thing for the league because it becomes a galvanizing force for many different fan bases across the league. They can root for their team plus against that team. Do you guys agree with that? Do you guys think that the Chiefs have become that for the NFL? Are they on the verge of becoming that? Where are you at in terms of the Chiefs as a villain in the NFL right now?
I can only speak for myself. I don't view the Chiefs as a villain. And I mean, I'm not a Chiefs fan. Like, I don't get excited for Kansas City Chiefs games like BK does, but I don't watch them with the intent of hoping they lose. And I think it's because of the likability of players and people that they have on their roster. Like, I like Andy Reid. I like Travis Kelce. I think he's pretty funny. Sometimes Patrick Mahomes' face kind of pisses me off, but overall, seems like he's a pretty good dude. They don't have players on their roster that I don't like. And maybe that's just how I identify villains in the NFL. Like, because the two, for me, that I view as more villains than the Chiefs are the Eagles and the Cowboys. And a little of the San Francisco 49ers. But I don't know if I view the Chiefs as villains. I can see how people do, though, because you are sick of them winning. But I asked you in this office, when did people begin to hate the Patriots? And I'm not asking St. Louis fans because I think St. Louis fans hated them in 2001. That was fast. But, like, when did the common NFL fan hate the Patriots? Because I think it was after they won that 3rd Super Bowl. I don't know if it was prior to them winning that 3rd Super Bowl. And a lot of that, to where the hate came into them, BK, was, you mentioned, the undefeated season that they had when they lost to the Giants. So I just don't know if I'd put the Chiefs in that villain stance yet. I feel like there might be other villains around the NFL.
I think they're a villain because I think it's just because everybody's tired of seeing them win. And I do agree to an extent that they have some likable characters on their roster, like Travis Kelce. I think Mahomes has become a bit of a villain because he kind of gives off that Brady effect to me a little bit, where it is you watch him play and you're like, man, I understand I'm watching it go, but I'm tired of watching him win. And I'm tired of watching him get away with it. And I think what makes it even better for the Chiefs is this role of the villain is they feel almost like the unstoppable villain right now. Because last year was the year I thought for sure, like, okay, they're not winning that Super Bowl. You know, if they don't have the wide receivers core, they got Tony lining up off sides. They got guys with butterfingers. They can't catch the football. Travis Kelce doesn't look like himself. And then all of a sudden they go in the playoffs and they just play perfect football and they win the freaking Super Bowl. And this offseason they added to that wide receiver room to where it's better. They've got Xavier Worthy, who looks like he's going to be a stud. Hollywood Brown's added on top of Rashee Rice, who had a good season last year. Like, they feel unstoppable. And I think that's the part that plays into fans that really hate the Kansas City Chiefs if you view them as the villain, as, okay, not only have they been winning, but they feel better, and it feels like they're going to continue to get better.
And that's why I think 2007, to answer your question, was when the New England Patriots became the true villain of the NFL. I think the first, like the 3 out of 4 Super Bowls that the Patriots won in the early 2000s, it was so new, so fresh, and they had been so bad that people were like, man, this Tom Brady guy, like, wow, this is crazy what he's doing right now. And this defense is so good. And Bill Belichick, oh my God, look at the defensive mind that this guy is. And there was, of course, the cheating scandals that came along with that. And so that was part of what led to them being hated among a decent portion of the NFL's fan bases. But 2007, to me, is when it really turned. They go 16-0 because they added one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. You get Randy Moss in there, who's just running roughshod over the entire league. And they were just, to T-Bone's point on what the Chiefs expects to be this year, where it feels like they're like unbeatable, that was the Patriots in 07. It felt like there's no way anybody could beat this team. And I think if you had polled non-Giants, non-Patriots fans going into that Super Bowl in 2007, who do you want to win this game? Like 95-5 would have been the answer of, I want the Giants to win. Everybody was rooting for the Giants to defeat that Patriots team. And to me, that's when it turned of like, nobody, unanimously, people are just done with the New England Patriots. Yep. And I think that will happen this year for the Chiefs. Because I do think there are some people that are still on Alex's side of this. They like, for whatever reason, Travis Kelce. I like Travis Kelce. I obviously like the Chiefs, so I'm not the target audience for this argument. But they like Travis Kelce, think he's likable. Mahomes is pretty likable. Andy Reid, like, who doesn't like that guy? I was going to say,
that's got to be like one of the top likable coaches in the NFL.
Chris Jones, super likable character. So, like, you have all of these pieces, and you look at them individually, and you're like, yeah, like, I don't know, I kind of like them. Kind of like with the Warriors, where it's like, yeah, I like Steph, I like Clay, and Draymond, yeah, he's kind of a knucklehead, but the guy seems super likable for the most part.
Who says knucklehead?
It's a 75-year-old person for me.
Not even a dad, a grandpa.
True. So people generally liked him, and then they added Kevin Durant. It was like, are you bleeping kidding me?
Son of a... So it's once you add that guy that people hate.
And I do wonder if one of Hollywood Brown or Xavier Worthy becomes that guy.
That's where I am.
That is the thing that could open up the Chiefs' offense this year to the point where you're like, are you kidding me? They had Patrick Mahomes.
But doesn't the player have to be kind of disliked already? Because Moss was disliked because
Moss
of the
was loved, dude. Moss was God, how do I describe Randy? Like, I can't even think of a good example of who he was in the NFL.
You loved him for the talent.
Moss was Stephon Diggs, but better. Like a more talented version of Stephon Diggs, where people are like, man, that guy, like, if you add him to your locker room, that is a cancer. Like, it could go really far.
Yeah, like, you like him for the talent, but you dislike the attitude.
Correct.
I don't know if Hollywood Brown or Xavier Worthy are that, though.
They're not, and that's where the comparison loses a little bit of its luster. But what they do potentially add is this team that I already viewed as potentially unbeatable just got better because of that. Yeah. The one thing that was their Achilles heel a year ago is now a potential strength of the roster, and you won't see that tonight because Hollywood Brown is not going to be available. He's hurt right now, but dude, the first time Xavier Worthy has a big-time play, and I bet you we see at least one of them tonight, fans on social media are immediately going to be going, are you kidding
That'll be me.
Are you freaking kidding me that this team got that guy that late in the draft?
And maybe it did, because I agree, it does lose some of its luster because there is no, like, Randy Moss. Yeah. They didn't get Stephon Diggs, which, oh, my God. But I remember when they got Xavier Worthy. I remember when he ran the fastest combine time ever, a 4.21. And I thought, wow, I wonder who's going to take a chance on it. And then when I saw the Chiefs were the ones that got him, I'm like, well, how's the NFL allow this?
This isn't fair.
And then they signed Hollywood Brown, and I'm just sitting there going, man, I know those guys don't have the star luster, but how do you keep allowing this to happen if you're the NFL? You know, and I know there's no rigging of it. It's just when that moment occurred, it was, to be case point, I went from, okay, that wide receiver room, I don't think if they ran back that wide receiver room, they could win another Super Bowl. I really don't. That was probably more of a quote unquote one-off than it was they could repeat with that same wide receiver room last year. But then when they make it a strength and they go into it with the best quarterback in the league, the best tight end in the league, who, by the way, his down year, quote unquote, was 800 receiving yards still.
Oh, man.
And they've got one of the best defensive tackles in the game. They've got a consistent running back. Like, it just makes me hate them.
So they're kind of like the Dodgers in terms of they keep finding all of this talent and then they pay for more.
But they win.
Yeah, that's true. They do win.
That's the difference between them and the Dodgers is they actually go out, they assemble the talent, and then they win when it matters the most.
Yeah.
So there's a slight difference between the two things there. On the other side tonight,
I felt Tony.
The big Raven. Well,
Kadarius.
The Dodgers get all this love, and everybody's like, "We need to emulate the Dodgers." And it's like, yeah, they have won exactly 0 World Series over the course of a 162 game season. 0.
One of them.
They won one in a 60 game shortened season where there were like 0 fans in the stands.
You don't count it. I count it.
I don't. It's a
championship.
nonsensical.
Just like
Mickey
Brady's
Mouse.
last Super Bowl doesn't count. 2020.
Agreed. I definitely do not count that
Here
one.
we go. Here we go. Now I'm starting to see the motives.
On the other side tonight, the Ravens' big offseason acquisition was Derrick Henry. Guys, you remember how much this guy terrifies me.
I love this
There
dude.
are 2 guys in the league that scare me as a Chiefs fan. 2. That's it. Just 2 people. One is Joe Burrow because he made me bleed my own blood, and I don't appreciate that.
I still got pictures of evidence for that.
The second is Derrick Henry because you know how good you have to be, how imposing you have to be as a running back to be the focal point of an offense in the 2020s. Like it doesn't happen. There's nobody else in the league that I can say that about other than Derrick Henry. So he had that on his shoulders. I wanted to ask you guys this question. Where does he rank for you among like the most impactful, the best running backs of the 21st century? Because I think he's probably higher up on the list than most people would immediately think about. I'm not going to put, like, for example, I know here in St. Louis, this will be a big Marshall Faulk. I think a decent portion of his best games came prior to 2000.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put him in a separate category. But for the guys that played the majority of their career, 2000 and beyond, where does he rank for you? Because I think Adrian Peterson I would have above him. LaDainian Tomlinson, I think all of us would have above him. And then the conversation really begins.
And that's where it stops for me. And I think I put Derrick Henry and Marshawn Lynch in the same category, and those 2 for me would be tied for 3rd. And I guess I would give the edge to Marshawn Lynch because you do have one of those championships. But it's clear-cut LT and Adrian Peterson are number 1 and number 2 for me because those 2 were just pure dominance. But I do believe Derrick Henry should be up there because the Tennessee Titans were talked about as a dangerous team. BK feared them solely because of Derrick Henry. It wasn't anybody else. It was Derrick Henry that you feared. That deep playoff run that they made, I think that was, 2017, 2018?
For the Titans. Like 20...
I think it was 2020, wasn't it?
Was it 2020?
Yeah.
He was just...
2019, excuse me.
2019. He was the best player on the field from start to finish every single game. So he and Marshawn Lynch are very identical to me. They would be tied for 3rd.
Yeah, I think I would give him, I agree, 1, 2, LT Peterson. I actually think I would put him 3rd ahead of Marshawn Lynch. I understand Lynch has the Super Bowl, but to your point on him being like the dominant factor of like he's the guy you game plan, I don't think Marshawn Lynch ever had that, unless I'm forgetting like early portion of Marshawn Lynch's
We
career.
talk about the Seattle Seahawks should having another Super Bowl if they would have ran the football.
I guess that's true. And the other thing for me is Derrick Henry had a 2,000-yard season.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that helps separate him from Marshawn Lynch. And, like, think of how impressive this is. In 2021, and I know you can't do the, like, what-if game, he almost ran for 1,000 yards in playing just 8 games. Like, that's unbelievable. So I would give Derrick Henry just a slight edge and put him at 3rd.
Yeah.
I think we're all sleeping on just how good of a fit this might be in Baltimore.
Oh, no, I love this fit.
It's going to be so much. He might get 20 touchdowns this year. I'm not predicting that. That's a lot, but I mean, it wouldn't shock anybody, I don't think, if he ended up like 15 to 20 touchdowns going into this year.
They were the best team in the AFC last season, and they did not have a red zone game. Yeah. Like when they got to the red zone, they were problematic because Jackson fumbled. They had no running game. Andrews was hurt. Now you legit have the best weapon in red zone territory.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Chiefs versus the Ravens tonight. You'll be able to hear that game right here on 101 ESPN. Pregame coverage starting at 6:30. Chiefs only a 3-point favorite in this one. I do think they cover. I think it's going to be a really close game, though. I've got this going over, and my favorite bet tonight is the over in terms of the point total. But do you guys have the Chiefs or the Ravens tonight? Chiefs a 3-point favorite at home.
I got Baltimore. I got Baltimore covering, and I'm with you on the over, but I have Baltimore covering. I have Baltimore winning straight up.
Yeah, I'll be rooting for Baltimore, but I think Kansas City will win. I took them minus the 3 points.
Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. Three one four three nine nine 9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. You guys get your questions in. We'll answer them here on BK and Ferrario. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK from the 636. Guys, if the UFL folded and the NFL offered the city of St. Louis an expansion team, would you take it?
If they're offering it to me, absolutely. Will St. Louis take it? No. Because that means they're still going to have to pay for the stadium. You're still going to, there would have to be a whole lot of elements that go into it. But if you're asking me if I would take it, hell yeah. Would love an NFL team.
I would take it, and I think the city of St. Louis would take it. It's the
You
NFL.
think they'd pay for the stadium?
I think so. It's the NFL. I think the city of St. Louis, I understand there's still the hard feelings of the exit from the St. Louis Rams.
I think you'd need another 10 years for some of the politicians to turn over again.
Mm-hmm. And I think you got to figure out city, county, figuring life out. But the factor in this one, too, is the expansion team.
Do you think they'd build a stadium in the county?
I think if they had their preference, God, I don't know. That's tough because obviously downtown isn't desirable right now with fear of going down there. So, if you had the perfect place to put it in the county, yeah.
I wonder if they just say, you know what, put it over there by the Top Golf area.
Chesterfield area.
There's a ton of space over there right now that you could build on. I wonder if that's what
put it up towards
doing.
St. Charles area too.
There's not as much space for development out there anymore.
No, I guess that's true. I mean, for a while there, it felt like it was up and coming. You building up Main Street, building up that area right off of it.
Now there's just not enough space.
Now there's not much going on, yeah. That probably would be your best spot because it is centralized enough for people.
Yeah. I could.
And
I
don't
could
get
see
me wrong,
him doing
it's way out west.
Yeah.
I would prefer it to be downtown, but if this is a hypothetical that probably will never happen, but in the scenario that they wanted to do something, I would
Big
imagine.
part of it, too, though, is the expansion team. You're not getting another team, you're getting your own team. That's the part that I think St. Louis would be a little bit more interested in over taking another team.
And with local ownership, that would be the biggest one. That would be the biggest driver.
All right, with a recent hot streak from the 239, do you think that Goldie will be back in 2025? They did not ask, do you think that he should be back? They said, do you think he will be back? That's an important distinction here.
I think he will. I think if this team finishes close to a playoff spot, they're going to look at this and say, well, Goldie was great. We need that leadership. Spent it on Brandon Crawford. Why not spend it on Goldschmidt?
I think he'll be back. Seeing all the people that are tied into the team constantly just kind of throwing out there that Goldschmidt coming back in 2025 the Cardinals would like tells me ownership's probably going to get involved in this decision and want him back as a quote-unquote legacy player.
I think they're going to bring him back. From the 417, guys, do you know that why Jordan Walker was not in the lineup last night? I think that was just a classic off day. I'm not telling you I like it.
I thought it was because there wasn't a lefty on the mound.
I think he had started 5 games in a row, and they decided they wanted the 2 days off consecutively. It is what it is. I'm not going to get up in arms about that. They started him 5 days in a row, so I would have preferred to see him in the lineup yesterday, but whatever.
I'm glad they continued to play him after that Yankees game. The Yankees' success, it's like you kept him in the lineup and you kept rolling with it. And the next couple didn't look great, but you kept him out there.
And it's possible, too. I don't know if they still do this. I would think they would. Classic one of those really hard work days where they push him in the field, work on things. I remember when it was his rookie year last year, they would do that in the second half. He'd have those work days, but they would DH him or he'd just give him a day off after that.
Well, and you get the 48 hours day off. So.
Yeah. I think that's all it was, for better or worse. All right, final thing here from the 314. Guys, in your opinion, what do you think has been the best punishment so far for the Pick'em Challenge? I was personally partial to T-Bone's beer mile. I thought that was the best.
I would have thought it sucked if he wouldn't have vomited. The vomiting was just the cherry on top.
It was fantastic. I really enjoyed that one a lot.
Chugged a beer and was like, oh, I feel bleh.
Me doing the contractions.
The contractions was probably
good.
my favorite. Or the waxing. The waxing was good, too.
Yeah, that was a good one as well.
Yeah.
We're going to bring those back. We've got four. Oh,
that one sucked.
Disgusting.
That one
It's
sucked.
disgusting, but it was.
That one sucked. I still want...
The baby food one was not good either.
Yeah, that one looked rough. I still want... And we couldn't figure it out. I still want to do a live prostate exam on the air.
Yeah, it's just too much.
I couldn't figure it out.
We can't.
Couldn't figure it out.
We tried to get a doctor to do it, and they were like, "Yeah, guys, we can't do that."
We can't do that.
Like, oh, okay, well,
I tried to enlist T-Bone to do it, but
it was apparently frowned upon. I asked my brother-in-law who works in the medical field. He's like, "Yeah, man, you're not going to find a doctor to do that." I was like, "Could you ask a friend?" He's like,
"I find a non-doctor to do it."
I was like, "Could you ask one of your friends though that works and they do it like off duty?"
What a weird request. Hey, could you go ask one of your friends if they'll give me a prostate exam on the radio?
He's like, "Listen, man, Just not going to happen.
I also, I don't know why, but I really enjoyed the one where BK was dressed as the snowman singing Christmas carols.
That one,
There's like nobody out there, but it was funny the couple people that would walk by and just like give that awkward stare.
It was more funny the people in that restaurant that would step out in the middle of it and be like, "Oh, someone's putting on a show."
I have done a lot of punishments.
You stink at this, man.
Yeah, you stink at this, man. Which it's amazing to me that the fast lane's like, let's have him on our pick'em challenge.
The one I hated the most
You know
was,
why? I've told you this. It was a really smart move by them.
I think what we'll do is
shot.
when he does his 4 punishments for the 4 months that we're going to punish him, he'll do those at the end of the show the week that he's going to get shot. So we'll do them all on Monday so he gets shot on, or Tuesdays so he gets shots by the fast lane.
I gotta say, the one I liked the least was when he had to dress up as Snow White, just because I couldn't look at him for the whole show.
The Snow White and the...
Dude, the handcuffs were funny. The handcuffs were funny because you kept complaining during the commercial break.
It wasn't fun, man. I couldn't type. It made my job hard.
That's the point, man.
All right. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. We will be bringing back the BK and Ferrario Pick'em. We'll be doing it every Friday throughout the NFL season, so be sure to stay tuned for that. We'll do those picks for the Week 1 NFL and college football slate tomorrow here on the show. I will also be a part of the Fastlane Pick'em Challenge, and if you haven't signed up yet, you can still do so. You can sign up before tonight's season opener. Playing the Pick'em Challenge at 101ESPN.com. Fastlane versus The Riz Show. I'm going to be a part of that as well, so you can see just how much better you are at picking games than I am. It's all available for you at 101ESPN.com. Coming up next, was last night a potential tryout for one of the Cardinals that could be in a bigger role next year? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. Cardinals got a win last night, and it was the rare one when Ryan Helsley was not on the mound to finish things out. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. In the 10th inning, Cardinals go to Ryan Fernandez to close things out for them, Alex. And all he does is strikeout swinging, intentionally walks Churiel because we're not letting that dude beat us. That's for damn sure. And then strikeout swinging with Rhys Hoskins. 3 at-bats, 3 strikeout swinging. The dude gets out of it. Cardinals win 3-2 in 10 innings with Ryan Fernandez shaking hands at the end. The reason I bring this up, Alex, is because this offseason, the Cardinals are going to have a really interesting and potentially difficult decision on what they decide to do with Ryan Helsley. Helsley's been amazing once again this year, and you could make an argument he's been their MVP. I think he's been a part of 70% of their wins this season as either a save or a winning pitcher. That's hard to replace. It's hard to replicate. But it also has a lot of value. And if the Cardinals want to make significant sweeping changes to their roster, one of the first things that they could do is trade Ryan Helsley in the offseason. Wouldn't be super popular, but could be something that they decide to do. In that scenario, they will have to have somebody else on the roster that can close out games for them. Alex, was last night, in your opinion, an opportunity for Ryan Fernandez to show that he's capable of doing just that if the Cardinals were to trade Helsley in the offseason?
Yeah, it was a start. It absolutely was a start. You talked about, 70% being a part of the outcomes for wins for the Cardinals. He's got 11 holds and 2 saves this season.
It's amazing.
And, I mean, he's had 53 appearances, and I know that seems like a lot more than...
I was talking about for Helsley. Yeah.
No, I know, but I think Ryan Fernandez has shown the ability to pitch in high leverage situations. And if you're going to go down the path where, look, we have to cut salary in certain places, but we also want to kind of continue this progress of the future for the Cardinals, Ryan Helsley is the best trade chip. And out of your bullpen right now, I think there's 2 guys that I would trust to come into a closing situation. 1 would be Kittredge and 2 would be Ryan Fernandez. And if you wanted to start the year off with Fernandez and kind of slowly wade into the waters or start with Kittredge and go to Fernandez, I'd be fine with that. But from June 14th up until last night, he's had all of those holds in one save. So you're seeing the impact that he's got in these late inning games. He's had his blow-ups occasionally, but everybody's going to go through these. I think the swing and miss stuff is the part that makes you believe a little bit that, hey, he just showed it last night against the Milwaukee Brewers. If he's got that swing and miss stuff, we can build off of this young guy as a closer.
Yeah, and that's where I am, is I watch Ryan Fernandez pitch and I go, okay, I'm typically one of those that says, like, anybody can close. Just throw him back there and we'll see what happens. I think Ryan Helsley's the piece. If you're going to be looking to kind of shed payroll in the offseason, he's the one that gets you something in return. And that's why we talked about him at this year's Major League Baseball trade deadline. So I would say if you're going to trade Ryan Helsley, the number 1 guy I would circle would be Ryan Fernandez. You know, I don't mind the idea of bringing back Kittredge and maybe slot him into that role as well. But Fernandez is the one that I look at and I go, okay, the stuff is there. He's got swing and miss. It's not like opponents really hit him well. Like, he's holding opponents so far this season to a 634 OPS. That's the guy that I think you can put back in that role, and you've got him under control for the next, 5 seasons. He's the perfect guy to slot back there and just see if it works. Maybe he ends up being a guy that can't close games out, but at least you get to find out next season if you were to trade Ryan Helsley. I'd be open to the idea if you're going to go with this kind of quote-unquote youth movement.
Not only would I be open to it, I think I would do it. I know it's a super unpopular opinion because it's hard to trade one of the best closers in baseball. Like, it's not something you want to do as an organization, but the Cardinals have put themselves into this situation, man. And they need a big-time return for something this offseason. Also, Ryan Helsley's going to get paid in a meaningful way. He's probably going to make close to $10 million via arbitration going into next year, would be my guess. He's making $3.8 this year. He's been one of the best closers in the game this year, and he has 42 saves on the season. That leads Major League Baseball. Saves get you paid. He knows that. It's why he wanted to be in this role, and the arbitration system will reward him for doing so. He's going to get a significant raise via arbitration this year, so I would probably trade him this offseason. And I would install Ryan Fernandez as my closer. I would not do it with Andrew Kittredge. And the reason why is because of his splits. Kittredge, if he goes up against lefties, immediately becomes batting practice. The ball goes a really long way when lefties are hitting against Kittredge. I like Kittredge. I think he has a very specific role that he can fill, and it's an important one. Big-time righties coming up to the plate, 7th, 8th inning, throw Kittredge out there. He's going to get the job done more often than not. Fernandez, the thing that makes him special, he doesn't really have significant splits, man. righties are terrible against them. They've got an OPS of below 600 against Ryan Fernandez, and then lefties are at like a 700 OPS, which is fine. You can make that work. They don't have a ton of slug. It's a 370 slugging percentage. He's only given up 3 home runs all year against left-handed hitters, and they have more than 100 plate appearances against him. He's good in that area. I have very few questions about him. The one question that I do have that is outstanding is, what does he do in those spots? Last night was a hell of a start. You're not going to get more of a high-pressure situation than that. Any chance of the playoffs is on the line right now. You're in a game where you're going up against the best team in the division, one of the best teams in the National League, and you've got the heart of their order coming up. And, oh, by the way, you start the inning with the dude on second. Good luck. Like, a base hit ties the game. Anything beyond that potentially loses the game for you. Can you go finish this out for us, Fernandez? And he did exactly that with 3 straight strikeouts swinging. And the dude gets a whiff rate of 41% on his slider. His slider is one of the best pitches this year in baseball. Opposing hitters are batting 150 against it with no slug. That's the dude that I'd be trusting next year to be my closer. I want to see more of it. Down the stretch this year, I know it's going to be hard to do because you're still technically in the playoff race, so they're going to throw Helsley out there as often as they can, and they should. It's the better way to go about it. But if there are days when Helsley is unavailable, I'd be going to that guy. Because I want to see down the stretch, what does it look like? So that begs the question, Alex. He's probably one of these guys. To you, over the next 3.5 weeks that we have remaining in this season, who is the Cardinal that has the most that they can prove to you? Whether that's good or bad, but the most to prove over the final 3.5 weeks of the regular season. Fernandez would be in this category to a degree as a closer. Who would fit into that category for you?
Mine would be Ivan Herrera. And Jordan Walker should be up there, but Ivan Herrera, for me, I think if he's got something to prove, it's, are you going to be a part of this roster, or is it going to be, nope, you're too much of a defensive liability and you become a trade chip? Because I think that is a key piece for this team next season, to where you don't have to do the Pedro Pajes 2.0, to where you're bringing somebody in because defensively he's good and you can use him in a backup role. You need Ivan Herrera's bat. And if he's going to play and that bat's going to play, the defense has to showcase. So if there's one guy to prove, it's going to be him in terms of progress moving forward.
I like that one. I think the one for me, and I know he's heated up a little bit of late, is still Lars Nootbaar. I want to see more of that quote-unquote peak Lars that we talk about. You know, it's been a disappointing year for him. I want to see if it was, okay, he dealt with injuries early in the year. You know, he broke the rib in spring training, and he had the oblique strain as well. Maybe that's all it was. Maybe it was just the injuries, had trouble getting timing going. Maybe here in the final second half, which he has been better at the 767 OPS. But even then, I still want to see a little bit more from Lars Nootbaar. You know, I think that's a guy that should be about 20% above league average. So I want to see him play well down the stretch so I can look at him and say, okay, I do feel strong about riding him in pen as a guy that's in our outfield for the next 3 seasons.
Mine's Michael Ciani. They're giving him a chance here, man. They're giving him a real chance to be able to go out there and win this job, not just for this year, but for beyond. And I think, talk about unpopular. Trading Ryan Helsley is one thing. Potentially trading away Victor Scott as well would be another. Not super well. No. Cardinals fans would probably prefer to see Victor Scott as their everyday center fielder next year than Michael Ciani. Understandable. He's a super exciting young player. But Michael Ciani has shown an ability, especially after the first month or so, to hit a little bit. Not a lot. There's probably never going to be much pop in his bat, and that's okay. But can you be a consistent 270 hitter where you're hitting for average, getting on base at enough of a clip that it's not like a huge problem for you, and you end up becoming this gold glove center fielder that basically becomes for the Cardinals what Kevin Kiermaier has been for the last decade? Can you be that? And if the answer is yes, and you continue to show it over the final 6+ weeks of the season, I think the Cardinals might buy into it as well, because they're clearly showing you he's the center fielder for right now. Can he be the center fielder for next year and beyond as well? I think he's got a chance to be able to prove that to them, for better or worse, over the final 6 weeks of the season or so. Coming up in 15 minutes, what's the trajectory look like for Philip Broberg? Alex has an interesting comparison that he's going to share with you coming up at 12:30. But next, we've got some NFL season predictions, but we're going to do this a little differently than you hear elsewhere. We'll do it next here on 101 ESPN. All right, let's dive into our NFL season predictions. Alex, we did this with our Major League Baseball predictions going into the season, and I thought it went pretty well in terms of like changing up the way that we go about this. Everybody that does this is going to do, all right, who do you have winning the AFC North? Who do you have winning the AFC West? And so on and so forth. And most of the divisions aren't all that interesting to discuss because we probably all have pretty similar picks throughout all of them. So we're going to go about it a little bit differently. We're going to go about this the way that we do our March Madness brackets, where we've got a Cinderella story, our classic 12/5 upsets, so the sleeper teams, the number one seed that you have the least amount of confidence in, and then who do you have in your Final Four? So we'll go through all of those picks individually, and we'll kind of see where we end up. So let's start out with the number one storyline of the season. Who's your Cinderella? Every year going into March Madness, this becomes the question that people have. Last year, if you were looking at the standings and saying to yourself who last year's Cinderella was, I would guess it was probably Green Bay. It kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, whoa, okay, Green Bay's good now, and Jordan Love's going to be a franchise quarterback. Who's going to be your Cinderella story for 2024, Alex?
Mine's the Chicago Bears. They're the team that's making the playoffs. They, for me, are the last team to get into the wild card spot in the NFC. Now, I do have them losing in the first round, but they're the Cinderella team that, I mean, I think a lot of people are excited about them, but you still do have a rookie quarterback. You have a lot of weapons to choose from. You got a new offensive coordinator. How is that going to look? But to me, I think that's the Cinderella team because I'm not as scared with the other teams around them in the NFC. Would you call the Indianapolis Colts a Cinderella?
Okay, I was going to ask the same thing because that's my team. I think yes, right? Do we agree on that?
I would say
they
so.
won 9 games last year, so I don't know if they're like truly the heart of this, but I feel like they're a sleeper team. I don't think anybody's really. Yeah.
I mean, they got plus odds to make the playoffs.
I think the Titans would be more of a Cinderella team than the Colts.
Let me clarify here. I actually think they don't. I think they're more of the sleeper team. Let's use them as the next category, the 12 over the 5. They're a 12 seed. They're a team that like. A lot of people see them as feisty, but it would take a few things going right for them to be able to go on a run. So let's flip that real quick. I'm going to use them as my 12/5 upset team, and I'll go somebody else as my Cinderella story.
So for my Cinderella, then this is where it's tough. Is like I can see how they could be a playoff team, but the AFC is so deep it makes me question it. It is the Tennessee Titans because I think you could see where Will Levis ends up becoming the kind of franchise quarterback, but it's a different version of the franchise quarterback. It's not the one that you look and you go, wow, you can dream on him being a top 10 quarterback like potentially Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels. It's the kind where he kind of falls in the golf category, where he kind of is just a good quarterback. Maybe it sometimes is plays in his way into the top 10, but typically he's kind of in that like 8 to 15 range. They've surrounded him with enough talent that they're going to find out. And if they're right, they can contend for a playoff spot and become the Cinderella story that we've been talking about.
It's hard because I've got a team that I want to use as my Cinderella, and I'm going to go ahead and give it because I really like the coach, I like the quarterback, I like what they've done at pass catcher, and that is enough for me to say, okay, if things come together in a specific way, it could work for them. And that's the Arizona Cardinals. What makes this difficult is the division. If they were in another division and didn't have to see 3 teams that I really like going into the season with the Rams, the 49ers, and the Seahawks, I'd feel even better about this pick. If they were in the NFC South, I would pick them to win the division. I feel that good about the Cardinals. But being in that division is tough. Here's the way that they start out the season, boys. First 6 weeks of the season. You ready for this? At the Bills, home against the Rams, the Lions at home. Then you got Washington. Okay, yeah, we can get that. At San Francisco, at Green Bay. Whew. You can make a pretty strong argument that is 5 playoff teams out of their first 6 weeks of the season. And then coming up after that, they've got Miami, they've got the Jets, they've got the Bears. It's not going to be easy. If they make the playoffs, it will be earned. But I've got them as my Cinderella team for this season. Very much under the radar. I like Kyler. I think he showed you some stuff last year. They got a big-time weapon for him. Our 12/5 seed upset team, the sleeper team this year, I mentioned I've got the Colts. I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now here on the show. I think Anthony Richardson is a dark horse MVP candidate. If they get a couple of good returns on some of their defensive investments from the offseason, I feel really good about that team. I think the Colts are going to be better than people expect. I think they're going to be super frisky, 10-7, 11-6, that kind of a team.
Mine's the Packers. I have, in just my kind of mock run-through of the NFC, I have the Packers getting to the NFC Championship game.
Are we doing the same thing that we did with the Orioles?
Well, I was going to ask you guys, but like I still think, like, if you look at that division with the Packers, I think a lot of people would say that they're the
I'd still say they're a sleeper.
They're the underdog compared to the Lions.
Yeah, I think they're a sleeper if you look at the NFC teams that are in the playoff race. And the reason I have them as a sleeper team is I have them going deeper in the playoffs this year. I have them kind of being what you just said with Anthony Richardson. I think Jordan Love could be an MVP candidate. I think that offense could be really good, what they showcased with Josh Jacobs. And I think they could surprise some people in terms of being a 12-over-5 upset. I think they could upset somebody in the playoffs.
Yeah, I like that one. Mine was the Indianapolis Colts as well. If Anthony Richardson's healthy and he plays like he did when he was healthy last season, he can be a potential dual-threat quarterback, guy that's going to use the legs, be able to run, and kind of, I think we talked about this, kind of be kind of the Cam Newton-esque quarterback is what we saw a little bit of last year. If he's that guy, then they can be a team that could be a sleeper team. The other one I thought of, I don't think they really fall into this because they had success last year, is the LA Rams. Everybody seems to look at them as a team that's not a playoff team. I think they are. I think they're a team that should be viewed as dangerous in the NFC. But maybe that's just my homer opinion since I'm still rooting for them. But I do think they are a dangerous team. They didn't have that last year, and somehow they made the playoffs.
A guy named Aaron Donald.
Yeah, Aaron Donald was still around.
Covering up a few things.
He was thinking about retirement, so.
He was
still
also
dominant.
one of the best defensive players in the NFL. All right, number one seed that you have the least amount of confidence in going into this season. So this is the team that's expected to win their division or expected to go deep into the postseason that you look at and say to yourself, man, they could do it, but it makes me super nervous to back them going into the year.
Man, I got two of them on this one, and I know I can't use them. I'm trying to decide which ones. I'm going to say the Cowboys.
How about them Cowboys?
Do you know I was going to say that?
Yeah,
Did you have
I
that written one? Yeah, it was between the Cowboys and the Bills, but the Cowboys are the team that, I do feel like they're going to be the best team in the NFC this season, and I have zero faith that they do anything with that. I can totally see them losing in the first round. I don't trust Dak in the playoffs. I think the team is a great regular season team, but I'm not going to invest that number one potential team in a playoff run.
Eagles, by the way, currently favored to win the NFC East. I was a little surprised to see that. I think the Cowboys are the better regular season team.
Yeah, Eagles is another one that I would wish to an argument to throw
I don't trust Sirianni.
The one for me, and it's because they're going to win their division and they're just going to lay an egg in the playoffs, it's the Falcons. They should win that division easily. I think we're going to get a little out over our skis because they're probably like an 11, maybe even 12-win team if everything kind of clicks together. I think they're more of just a fantasy darling. You know, you love it because Kirk Cousins, Drake London, maybe Kyle Pitts if he shows up for a change, Robinson, they're going to put up the points. And then you're going to get to the playoffs and Kirk's going to go, prime time? Oh, no. And forget how to play quarterback, kind of like Dak does in the playoffs. The Atlanta Falcons are the one for me.
I like that one a lot. We mentioned the Eagles would be another team that I think you could use for this. I would go with the New York Jets. They're the team that is currently favored to win the AFC East. It's kind of a three-team race between the Jets, the Bills, and the Dolphins in most people's mind. But a lot of people have the Jets making the postseason this year. I think they're a minus. Like, you have to bet $120 to win $100 in Vegas to have them make the postseason. I'm not that. I think they have a very good defense, obviously. I just don't know about the offense, guys. I just don't know. Rodgers, the last time we saw him be good was like 2021.
Yeah.
He's 40 years old. He's coming off of a torn Achilles with a questionable offensive line still. And injuries that are question marks all over the team. Breece Hall's awesome. I love him. Also coming off a significant injury still. Mike Williams, is he going to be healthy for more than 6 games this season?
It's already on a snap count to start the season.
I don't know. The wide receiver beyond that is a real question mark for the Jets. I think they're going to be good. It just makes me nervous. It's a very fragile bet if you're going to believe in the Jets to A, win the division, and B, get deep into the postseason.
Stalter just texted us and said, bleep you, Tanner.
You know it's true, Stoltz.
I mean, Kyle Pitts has already got
with everything you just said.
I know. That's why I don't appreciate the anger.
Kyle Pitts has already got a hammy injury. Stoltz, come on,
The reason he's mad is because he's lashing out in a way that he knows he agrees. He's like, yeah, it's a fantasy team. They've constructed it from the outside in. I've heard Stalter give this rant a million different times. You build from the inside out, and they do it opposite because they think that they can make headlines and all that. Yeah, he knows. Stalter, you know.
You get it.
Everything
You
he
get
said was right.
You get it.
All right, final four. Give me your teams that are going to be playing on championship weekend, Alex.
Atlanta.
KC versus Baltimore. I think you're going to see tonight as the preview of the AFC Championship. And I have Green Bay versus Detroit.
Wow, we have the same NFC championship.
Do we?
We do.
You have Green Bay going as well?
I have Green Bay beating Dallas, and I have Detroit beating San Francisco.
I almost threw Baltimore into the conversation of the one seed I don't trust. But I think they'll ultimately end up being fine. I don't have them in the championship game. I think you see Houston and Kansas City meet in the AFC championship game.
We'll have three different teams playing against the Chiefs.
And in the NFC, I've got San Fran and Detroit, a rematch of last year. I think Detroit's better than they were from a year ago, especially defensively in that secondary. I think they're going to get a rematch in the NFC Championship game.
I've got the Packers and Lions as well. And I've got the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game playing against the Buffalo Bills. I think we're sleeping way too much on the Bills this year, guys. I think we're sleeping way too much on them.
They were my team that
Cinderella.
No, they were my. No, that one I would have gotten yelled at on. That one.
I've got them winning the AFC East.
That was the one with Dallas. That's
Why
like,
not?
I see them winning the AFC East, but I don't trust them.
I trust their coach. I trust their quarterback.
You do?
I think their defense is fine. I think that what we do, sometimes when we see a team lose like a big-time player, especially a playmaker, the way that Stephon Diggs didn't do a damn thing for them down the stretch last season. He was a net negative for them on the field because of the way that he was crying about his targets all season long. I think there's a decent chance that they end up being a better team this year. Like maybe not win more games, but become a better team this year than they were a year ago. And we see them kind of similarly to how we saw the Chiefs after they traded Tyreek Hill, where we're like, oh, they actually ended up kind of repurposing things and made themselves a more well-rounded team. I think they're going to focus more on the running game this season. I think the defense could be solid. I know they lost a lot of veterans, but I think a lot of those guys were names more than they were players that were really significantly impacting them on the field last year. I think the Bills are going to be a really good football team. And I do think the Chiefs will beat them in the AFC Championship game, but I think that they get there.
It's interesting
All of
because
us had them, though, so.
I agree we're overstating the loss of Diggs a little bit. I also still don't trust Josh Allen because I know, though, he can do great things. He's going to do something stupid every single game that could cost them.
I trust him in the regular season. I feel like there's two different conversations with, I think Dak's one of these guys, and I think Josh Allen and Lamar is another, where we like have a conversation about what they're going to be and whether or not you trust them. And it becomes like convoluted of playoff version of that versus regular season. Josh Allen works in the regular season, man. That dude's going to win you some football games. Lamar Jackson, that dude's going to win you a bunch of football games. Same thing's true for Dak Prescott. He's going to throw for a crazy amount of yards. He's going to be great for your fantasy team. And then in the playoffs, you don't trust him. He's going to throw weird interceptions. He's going to fumble the ball. It's going to be weird. I trust all of those dudes, though, in the regular season to get the job done.
Yeah, maybe I'm off. I feel like there's always like a 6-game stretch where we look at Josh Allen and go, whoa, what's up with Josh? He's turning the ball over a lot. It's just like, no, that's Josh Allen.
I agree with BK. The regular season, I think he's always in the MVP conversation for how he is the sole proprietor of that team's success. But it's as soon as postseason week number 1 starts, I'm just done. I don't trust it. I don't trust it with Dak. You're going to make a bad decision. You're going to fumble the ball. You're going to do something that screws the team over. And this is hard for me to see them get to the Super Bowl or the championship.
All right, let's get out of here on this because we've given our championship weekend picks. I've got the Bills, Chiefs, and the Packers, Lions. You have the Packers and Lions as well, Alex. You've got the Chiefs playing against the Ravens, correct? In the AFC Championship game. And then T-Bone has the Lions versus the 49ers, and he's got the Chiefs going up against
Houston.
Against the Texans. Who do you have in the Super Bowl? Who you got winning?
Alex? I got Detroit first KC, and I got KC winning.
Wow. You got the three-peat.
Yep, I got the three-peat. But I got my Detroit Lions get there.
I've got the third time's a charm for the San Francisco 49ers. San Fran takes down Kansas City Chiefs and denies the three-peat.
I've got the Chiefs going up against the Packers, so we all have the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Come on, what are we doing here?
See why I hate this
but
team?
They're not villains because we always pick them.
No, they're like Thanos.
If they were villains, you'd stop picking them because you'd expect them to lose.
I feel like I can snap a finger and they're there.
That's what makes a great villain, though, is that he feels inevitable. That's what makes the villain so great. And I've got the Chiefs winning against the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl. I think this is the year that it all comes together for Green Bay, man. I like the fact that they got a new defensive coordinator, finally, like 5 years too late, but they finally got him.
Who was their DC last year?
I forget his name, but a guy that should have been fired like 3 years ago. He was not good at his job. They finally got a new guy in there, and that's going to help them out. I think the Chiefs will take them down in the Super Bowl to win the three-peat. So Alex and I are both on that side. T-Bone has the 49ers winning it all this year. If you guys would like to get your picks in for this week in the Pick'em Challenge, you can do exactly that at 101ESPN.com. It's Fastlane versus The Riz Show. They're throwing down all season long. Pick'em Challenge once again at 101ESPN.com. We'll be doing our Pick'em tomorrow, our favorite bets going into the weekend, college and NFL related. That'll be tomorrow on the show. We'll do that every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. We will have our Pick'em Challenge punishments the following week. With Alex and T-Bone on BK coming up next, Alex said earlier today he thinks that Philip Broberg's trajectory could be like this Stanley Cup defenseman. Who is that? We'll tell you next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK from my friends over at Victory Men's Health. It is time to unlock your inner champion. That's what they've done for me, and the way they did it was by helping me out with some micronutrient labs. So I went over there, they took my blood, and they found out, okay, where are you at with your levels? Whether that's low testosterone. Some people will show they've got a lower version, lower levels on the testosterone levels. That could mean that you're feeling a little groggy. You don't have the same energy. Maybe you're running around with your kids. You're getting tired quicker. You're not getting the same amount of effectiveness out of your workouts. That wasn't the case for me, but I did have some other vitamin deficiencies, and they've been able to help me out with that. Turns out it makes a significant change in my life on a day-to-day basis. They have helped me unlock my inner champion. They could do the same for you. That could mean different things for different people, whether that's weight loss goals that you've been struggling to meet on your own. They could potentially help you out with that. Low testosterone, as I mentioned, erectile dysfunction issues. Check them out today. They have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area. They can help you unlock your inner champion at Victory Men's Health and online at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com.
Terry Harris here at Day Sports Center Update, joined by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals beat the Milwaukee Brewers last night 3-2 as they take 2 of 3 from Milwaukee. They are off today before they'll be back in action tomorrow against the Seattle Mariners, where they'll start a 3-game set. 7:15 will be first pitch tomorrow. Bobby Miller gets to start for the Seattle Mariners. Eric Fedde will be on the start for the St. Louis Cardinals. And tonight here on 101 ESPN, you can hear the opening kickoff of the NFL season as the Baltimore Ravens take on the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30. This Sports Center update is driven by Jenny Londoff Chevrolet and Jenny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so what's the trajectory look like for Philip Broberg? The newest Blues defenseman came over from the Edmonton Oilers. They kind of had him in and out of the lineup, third-pairing defenseman down to the AHL, and then he comes in for the postseason and looks like a legit top-four defenseman against some of the best competition that the NHL has to offer. So, Alex, yesterday you started looking into this, and you sent me and Tanner a note, and you said, hey, I think there's a Stanley Cup champion top-four defenseman. I don't know that Philip Broberg is for sure going to become this, but there's a chance that the trajectories could be similar. Who is it? Why'd you feel that way?
It's Gustav Forsling from the Florida Panthers. I think a lot of people thought I was going to go Jay Bouwmeester. No, it's not that. I went Forsling because I was trying to find guys who never really got the opportunity on their first team to be an everyday defenseman. And Forsling was this guy. Now, they did use him towards the end of his time in Chicago, but he only played 41 games, 43 games. He was kind of a fringe in and out player. But if you go back through his first 3 seasons that he was with the Chicago Blackhawks, and I went kind of year by year in terms of ice time, Forsling's first year, he played 14 minutes and 49 seconds a game, averaged around that time. Broberg's first season was 13:28. The next season, Forsling went to 14:09. Broberg was at 12:36. And then at the age 22 season was where it spiked for Forsling. That was his third season in the NHL, where he started playing about 17 and a half minutes a night. And that was with Chicago. It didn't work out. He got claimed off of waivers by Carolina, stayed in the minors. And then that fourth season in Florida, he only played partial season, but that was the COVID year. That's where he kind of took off. He had 5 goals, 17 points in 43 games, played in the playoffs, and started to get to 18 to 19 minutes a night. And then the next 3 seasons, he was a double-digit goal scorer. He was a guy whose plus-minus was in the 40s or above. And then this past season was, I think, the coming-out party for Forsling in terms of everyone saying, yeah, that's a top-pair defenseman. So much so that Florida moved on from two of their guys that were on their Stanley Cup championship. I look at Broberg, and he's in the same spot that Forsling was in his first couple of years. Played for his team, was sent back to the minors, never really played more than just a third-pair defenseman, but when he got some opportunities, he capitalized on it, and he did so in the postseason this year. I think when you take a guy from a first situation that doesn't get the opportunity to kind of spread his wings and make mistakes, you get a player that's like, oh, well, this guy's not nothing. I mean, Forsling was claimed off of freaking waivers by the Florida Panthers. I think Broberg can be along this trajectory in terms of now you're putting him in a top 4 role. Now you're telling him to make some mistakes. He's 23 years old. And if you get a couple of seasons to where he makes the mistakes, learns from it, and goes to that next level, man, you could be talking by 25, 26 years old playing at the same level that Gustav Forsling is playing at in terms of, I don't know if he's a double-digit goal scorer. That's the part that I just don't know because he's never gotten those chances. Sure. But I do know the guy can put up points. He did so in the postseason. And Daniel Nugent-Bowman was the one that told us that there are some in Edmonton that believe he's got top-pair potential solely off of his defensive abilities.
Yeah, anytime that you have a young defenseman, I'm willing to give it time. Because we've seen so often, whether it's here in St. Louis or elsewhere, like these guys just take like 5 or 6 years to really blossom into the players that they're ultimately going to be. The guy that comes to mind for me on this, Alex, is Vince Dunn.
Yeah.
Now, he did totally dissimilar in terms of who they are stylistically as players. Vince Dunn is smaller in stature. He's more of a puck mover. He's going to be offensive-minded instead of a defensive-minded guy. Like they're just very different players. But they play the same position, and it took a while for Vince Dunn to realize his full potential. And I think it took a while for him to see, I can do this at the NHL level, and to just have the confidence to try stuff, man. So you look at Broberg, and we're basically 2 years into this in any meaningful way when you look at like just the overall number of games that he's played. He's played 81 games. He split that up over a couple of years. It's like a couple of years of real tangible opportunities at this level. I think we're going to get 2 years into this deal before we really know whether or not Broberg is the guy that you're talking about.
And I think that's the Blues' hope. They signed him to that 2-year contract, hoping that by the time his contract is up, They see what he's potentially is, and then you give him that big money.
And I don't know what that is. I don't know if that is he becomes like 70% of Jay Bouwmeester. I don't think he's going to be Jay Bouwmeester, to make that very clear, but can he be like a watered-down version of that, a Diet Coke version of Jay Bouwmeester? Could he be like a Jacob Chikrin, a guy that we talked about a lot, where is he a number one defenseman? No. Can he be a top pair defenseman, though, on a good team if he's got the right partner next to him? Sure, that's possible. He's a puck mover. He plays pretty well offensively. I do wonder if there's more offensive potential in Philip Broberg than what people are giving credit for.
I think there is. You saw it in the postseason in the short sample size that he had. He scored 2 goals in the playoff games.
Yeah, I'm high on him. I think that it was one of the best moves, honestly, process-wise, that Doug Armstrong has made in recent season, basically post
O'Reilly.
Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
I think this was arguably, based on the process to get him, the best move that he's made. And I'm super excited to see what it looks like over the next couple of years.
He and Buchnevich they might go down as two of the best moves that Doug Armstrong has made beyond Ryan O'Reilly. Because, of course, you get the Stanley Cup, but depending on what, you've got 8 years of Pavel Buchnevich now, so you hope that there's potentially another cup run in that 8-year stretch. But the reason Forsling was so interesting to me too is I went back and I saw that article that was written by the Florida Panthers beat writer on The Athletic during the Cup run.
Yeah.
And he had talked about how sometimes you find top pair defensemen in the strangest ways. He talked about, of course, Forsling being claimed off of waivers, other guys who had been traded for 7th round draft picks, some guys that were just signed as minor league free agents. And he talked about Forsling, and Forsling even spoke about how he got the opportunity in the AHL to figure out who he was. And then when a team told him, we want you to play this way, he was able to use that experience there. That's the part that I'm super high on Broberg as well, because he's got the experience. He just worked with Paul Coffey in Edmonton, who established some confidence in him. We saw it in the postseason. Now what happens when he goes to a team and says, hey, you're not behind a Darnell Nurse or a Matthias Ekholm or an Evan Bouchard. You're our guy, and we need you to be our guy. What does that look like?
Imagine how much it changes the outlook for this retool if they got it right.
That's what Tanner's been saying all along. You get a Colton Parayko pair, you're further out, you're faster out of the retool than what you were before you had a number one defenseman. Because before him, you were waiting for Theo Lindstein to become a potential top pair.
Which could be 5 years.
Could be 6.
Yeah, it could be a really long time before you get to that place. And if Broberg becomes that guy, and again, not a number one defenseman, not a traditional, the guy, but it could be kind of similar, going back to the Florida Panthers, to what they had, where it's like, do they have a true traditional number one defenseman? A lot of people would argue no.
Yeah.
People during the Stanley Cup playoff run were saying this team is winning in a very different way than what is traditionally expected.
Ekblad was kind of their Parayko, to where he's not an elite guy, but he's their number one.
He's really good. Mm-hmm. He's a really good player, and for that team, he filled the role, and they were so deep, and they had so many different dudes that knew exactly what they needed, and they were so good offensively that it worked. And they had a goalie that was standing on his head during the playoff run.
Well, we got that too.
Which the Blues potentially have as well.
Not Husso.
So when you have a goalie in place, you have a potential number one defenseman in Parayko, whether you agree with him being that, or you have a top pair in place potentially with Parayko and Broberg, and then you look at your top 6 and you're like, okay, so you got Thomas, you got Kyrou, you got Booch. Maybe you fill in that number 2 center position with a Dalibor Dvorsky. You add in a Neighbors. You add in one of Snuggerud or why am I blanking on his name? Bolduc. Now you're starting to see the way that this thing can get filled out pretty quickly. And within the next couple of years, maybe the Blues do become a contender again. That's how it happens. It goes quick once you get these kinds of players in place. And that's what they've been trying to accomplish.
And the bigger part with that too, BK, is if you do click on that, and let's say in 2 years he finally clicks and he hits that, imagine how wide that window is open and how long it's open, because this is a 25-year-old defenseman, not a 31-year-old defenseman. Because some guys it takes. Forsling's 28. Not that he's his best years are behind him, but if you get it at 25 before you're 28, now you're really talking.
All right, last thing on this before we get to the junk drawer on the other side. There was a quote that we wanted to get to from Doug Armstrong in Ben Fredrickson's piece over on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch the other day. And I think this quote is the latest reminder among many as to why fans appreciate the way that he operates, the honesty, the transparency that he has. And I thought this quote kind of just symbolized all of that. It said, quote, "I get paid by Mr. Stillman, but I work for the fans. Tom has said this on numerous occasions, that he is a steward for the franchise. That's what we have to do. We understand that we are very fortunate to have a fabulous fan base here. We need to continue to show our appreciation to them by being honest, by being the best that we can be. You're not going to make everybody happy all the time, but that's part of the game. One of the things in the Midwest, and certainly here in St. Louis, is that they appreciate honesty in an honest day's work. If they believe the training staff, coaching staff, management staff, and players are giving the best of their abilities, then they can support it, and that's what we are trying to do. I thought those first couple of lines, I get paid by Mr. Stillman, but I work for the fans, and Tom said this on numerous occasions, but he is a steward of the franchise. That part of the quote is what people are missing from the Cardinals right now. And not every quote has to be a Cardinals versus the Blues things. I understand that. But right now, I think that the teams are in such similar places and are viewed so differently that it's hard not to contrast the two approaches in terms of the way that they're going about their current path. The Blues are being open and honest and are telling fans, hey, listen, we don't want to go to the bottom of the league. We want to do this a specific kind of way, and we need you to hang with us while we try to get there. We understand it's not going to be the best hockey that you've ever seen here in St. Louis, but we're trying to get back there, and this is what we believe is the best path. And they see that with their actions as well, with the offer sheets, like being aggressive and doing all these different things. It's like, okay, even if I don't totally see it yet, I trust the plan. And the Cardinals, it's the opposite, dude. They keep telling you this team's better than you think. This team's better than you think. And people have eyes and they have a brain and they're using both and they're seeing what's on the field on a day-to-day basis. And they're like, man, this team is not better than I think it is. This team is worse than you think it is. And you don't seem to be willing to acknowledge that. And until you do, this is what we're going to see. So I thought it was so important to just kind of bring that quote to light and give it a little bit more attention because I think it's so symbolic of the differences in the way that these two organizations are approaching a very similar situation.
I remember the Rangers did this back in 2017, where their owner basically came out and put a letter out to season ticket holders saying, like, hey, we're going to go through a little bit of a rebuild because it's going to get ugly for a couple of years, but stick with us because we're going to get out of it quick. Now, the Rangers operate with more money and more ability, but they were bad. They were the worst team in the NHL for 2 years, got to the playoffs, bad again, and then they started winning. And I think the upfrontness, if that's a word, I'm going to make it a word. I think that is why so many people are on board with this Blues and don't get frustrated with them. There are moments that you get frustrated. Berube getting fired. Jordan Kyrou has his moments. But
the Sharks game.
The Sharks game, the Blue Jackets game. But overall, it seems like the optimism is always there for Blues fans. And the quote that stuck out to me in this, BK, was at the end where he said, if they believe the training staff, coaching staff, management staff, and players are giving their best of the ability, they can support it. And I think that's what Doug Armstrong and the ownership group have done. You spend to the cap, even when you say you're not going to spend to the cap, you spend to the cap. The owner, the management is always making trades in the offseason because they're trying to find players that make it better. And then you put that on the ice and say, now you go do the job. And that's where I think the Blues have gotten so many people optimistic.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we got to talk a little bit more about Paul Goldschmidt. He's reemerged as the bat that the Cardinals have been craving. But do they have that guy on the roster for 2025 right now? We'll talk about that in just a little bit. The Junk Drawer is next here on 101 ESPN. Alex, so I've got a question for you.
Okay.
It's football season. This is my first real football season with a walking, talking toddler.
Oh, so you won't be watching football.
That's what I wanted to ask you. How's this go, man? Get me prepared for the football season that is about to be on the horizon. Because, like, my usual Sundays were essentially, hey, I'm going to sit in front of this TV starting at noon.
Don't you always go to Kara's house, though, with her family for Sundays?
Yeah, but Saturdays is where I'm really worried.
Oh,
Sundays
okay. I was
are
gonna
one
say.
thing. Like, I've got extra family that can help out with a little guy, and I can do my thing. I'm like, I'm not putting it all on them. Don't get me wrong. I'm in the room. Like, I'm attentive and stuff. Let's make that very clear. Saturdays are kind of what I'm worried about because I've got the Missouri Tigers that I like to watch. And you know how this works? Like, from 11 a.m. until 11 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah. That doesn't happen anymore.
Most days, there's some kind of game in any of those blocks that I'm going to be interested in at least a little bit. Is that just over for me? Was the death of my college football watching experience?
I would say the death of it. I want to mime something for you that's going to be your life on Saturdays.
Okay.
Right here. See this? You're going to be watching football off your phone. Okay. That's what you're going to be doing.
Luka doesn't watch TV yet. Not because we're, like, preventing it. He's just not interested in it yet. So the TV is still available right now. We're still there.
Well, that's good then, because mine isn't, but mine's not.
Miss those days.
Mine's not available, but sometimes I kind of force it to be available. But then, because they're mobile, you're never in one room. Now, like, we have the luxury sometimes. My follow-up question was, have you buttered up your wife for the last 3 or 4 months?
I mean, I've done what I can. You know?
Because that's the other thing. My wife is a saint.
Question's no.
My wife is a saint on Sundays. She's like, hey, you can watch some of the football, hang out with them, and she's like, just come sit in the basement with us. So we'll sit in the basement, and they'll run around. Katie will kind of entertain them for a little bit. I'll be able to pay a little bit more closer attention to the game. But more times than not, it's either staring at it on my phone, but most of the time, too, we're at like a park or something when it's nice, like these first 2 months. So, yeah, I watch a whole lot of football highlights.
Somebody on the text line said, BK, you have the best excuse built in. You say, sorry, it's for work. Yeah. That doesn't work all the time.
Go ahead and try that with your wife and see if it works.
That's not totally how that works. Early on, I don't know if you were the same way, Alex, but early in my career in radio, I was like, I had such imposter syndrome, partially because I'm not from St. Louis. And so I was like, I need to see every inning and every at-bat of every Cardinals game, or I will be found out by the audience that I'm a total fraud. I don't know what I'm talking about. And, like, maybe some people still feel that way, but I felt like I needed to be locked in for every single pitch of every game. And, like, for hockey, every sequence of every game. Otherwise, I was just going to be, like, the worst radio host in the history of St. Louis. And as I've gone on a little bit longer, I've realized, okay, there are times where I can take a step back, and if I miss something, like, I can go back and rewatch it. It's not the biggest deal in the world. So I have had to pick and choose where this is for work versus, okay, yeah, I'm good here. I can help out with the kid now.
Yeah. I mean, you pick your battles in certain situations. If it's a important game, then Katie understands, like, yeah, he's got to watch this, so I get it. There are other times that it's like, I can watch the highlights of this one. Especially, like, summertime is always so tough for me during baseball season because when I'm doing hockey, I'm home 3 nights a week. I'm gone 4 nights a week. And so it's like summertime is more of like, now I'm home, and so I can get to see everybody. And so it's like picking and choosing your battles. But, I mean, for football, luckily I've tried to get my oldest to embrace football with me a little bit.
How's that going?
It has not worked. But my next step is my middle child. If I could just get one of them to say, I want to watch football with Daddy, then it's a win in my book.
Yeah, the real tough one's going to be like, you know how the fall/winter is. Like, you got something new every week, right? We got pumpkin picking. Yep. We've got apple picking. We've got...
Get your apple picking out of the way before the football season starts. We did it last weekend.
We've got Grant's Farm. We've got the zoo. Yep. We've got, like, all of these different things that you go to. And so then that starts being incorporated into the football watching experience. It's like, oh...
Yeah.
I love being around the family, but man.
That's why wintertime is so great, because you can't go outside that often. So you are in the house and you have to find things to do, and most of the time you have the TV on in the background.
I'm not going to lie. Hearing all this makes me so excited that I don't have to deal with that.
It's the best thing in the
it's
world.
so much
I
fun.
wouldn't trade it for anything. Would not trade it for anything. Luka is the greatest thing that has ever happened to us. It changes a lot.
Here's a
You got to be ready for it.
I don't have to schedule my stuff. I know 12 o'clock that TV comes on. I sit down, maybe crack open a cold one if I'm feeling saucy on a Saturday.
Yeah, I don't do that.
I've already been thinking about, like what's my daily fantasy lineup time look like now compared to what I used to. I used to spend some time with these things, man. I want to win some money up throughout the season, and I don't know that.
Let me give you a real quick tip, BK.
Anymore.
What I've done in the past, and so Kara, if you're just turn down the radio if you're listening, tell her you're going to clean the house for her.
Oh, she doesn't care. Oh, that doesn't do it.
That works for me. I'm like, hey, I'm going to mop and sweep up here, and then you just.
I think every
I'm mopping.
Every household, I would imagine, has like one partner that's more clean and like neat and stuff, and the other partner that's less so, and it helps to balance each other out. I'm the clean one, so I already do that stuff anyways. That's not gonna be
you done
I'm not like buying Goodwill.
You done screwed it up 4 years ago, man. You guys got married.
Got to find your Goodwill moment. I don't know what it is, but
we'll figure it out. It's the
flatten her tire and then tell her you'll change it for her.
It's the showing of love. Like that's her love language. Is like.
Oh, well, you're gifts. Not watching a whole lot of. Oh, okay, giving gifts.
But
okay.
Like beyond that, just like the really nice romantic stuff that you can do. I'm really good at all of that stuff. I'm hopeless romantic.
Hold on a minute. What turn did we just take right now?
I don't know.
I went from giving gifts to the romantic stuff.
I still just imagine myself watching football all day and how great it's going to be.
That's the best part romantic. That's the best part about Thursday night, Friday night, Monday night football. The kids are in bed by then, so
yeah, maybe for you, man. He's Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up next,
you'll get there, man.
One day. Coming up next, Paul Goldschmidt has emerged once again as the bat that the Cardinals were craving. But do they have that bat in the lineup ready to go for 2025? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends over at Classic Air Care who have been making people comfortable since 1926. I've been using Classic Air Care since 2016. They've been a part of the Ferrario family since I was real little. My dad has been a part of their maintenance agreement for the longest time, taking care of their old HVAC system. And don't just believe me using them. Believe the thousands of positive reviews up on their Google reviews. It's a 4.8 rating like this one from Diane. Eric was out within hours of calling that her AC went out. We are new to the area and called after a recommendation from our neighbor. He answered every question and had us and felt very honest with what he was telling us. We will be asking for Eric by name for our next cleaning and have already signed up for the maintenance agreement. So you need to do that as well as get on their maintenance agreement. If you're in the market for an HVAC system, call Classic Air Care today. They will take care of you and your family with your HVAC, with your heater, all of your needs. Even do plumbing if you've got plumbing issues. Call them or schedule online, classicaircare.com. Once again, Classic Air Care and classicaircare.com.
With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. So, Alex, the Cardinals have been looking for somebody to emerge as, okay, that's the bat we can lean on over a 20, 25, 30-game stretch. And when they were hot, that bat was, for the large part of it, Wilson Contreras. They had a guy that was really going at a meaningful level. And prior to that, it was Mason Wynn and Alec Burleson that were hitting at an extraordinarily high level. Now they've got a new one that's emerged lately, and it's not the guy that we were predicting it to be. It's Paul Goldschmidt. But the consistent theme all year long, really, among these kinds of situations is they haven't had one guy that has been it from start to finish. 2022, it was Goldie and Arenado all year long. From start to finish, those guys were amazing. Last year, you never had anybody emerge as that, and then we saw what happened at the end of the season. This year, you haven't once again, and you're a 500 club as a result. Alex, do you right now, as we look towards 2025, do you see somebody that has that capability currently on the roster? A guy that you can look at and say from game 1 to 162, they're going to be 30% above league average offensively. And they're going to be consistent, and they will be the driving force of the offense. I look at Milwaukee, for example. Willy Adames has been that for them. Even as they've lost Christian Yelich, who was their best hitter, Adames has been just a driving force of the offense from start to finish this year for them.
Yeah. I don't think they have one. I don't. I think if you're just going off of consistency and taking away that 30% above league average, I could say Mason wins that guy because he has been consistent all season long. Even when he's gone through a little bit of a dry spell, that's the 30%
He's
above.
not getting you 25 home runs. He's not driving in 100 RBIs.
His is more consistency in terms of contact, getting on base, showcasing a little bit of swag and defense. But if you're asking for that like MVP-esque type of player, you don't have that. You only have that in Jordan Walker. Or Nolan Arenado, but I don't think Nolan Arenado's getting there. Wilson Contreras is way too streaky. It's Jordan Walker. And if you don't have Jordan Walker at that level, then you're going to be searching for that player for a long time because I don't believe you can get that player via free agency. I don't think those guys make it to free agency. And when they do, they cost you $400 million. And you know the Cardinals aren't spending that money. And it's rare that those guys get traded. So to me, it's Jordan Walker, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's either Walker or I wonder if Contreras can be that guy. You know, I look at his numbers. The last 3 years, he's been has an 800 OPS or more. Now, granted, he's going to have to play more than 125 games, which he's not surpassing that 3-year mark. Yeah. And that's the one thing that does concern me. But you look at that 3-year stretch, he's gone from 815, 826 to this year 848 OPS. So maybe he becomes that guy, but even he's got a little bit of those streaks to that game. And honestly, as much as I want to think Walker can become that guy, at this point, I'm skeptical if he can. Yeah, so
he's streaky too.
Yeah, I don't know if they have that guy internally. And those guys just don't grow on trees. Very rarely do they become available. And when they do, they cost a ton, whether it be in free agency or in prospects. Look at what the Nationals got in exchange for Juan Soto. You almost have to grow that guy internally if you're the St. Louis Cardinals, just like they probably have to grow a ace internally as well, typically.
Or that player wants to play in St. Louis.
Sure.
Or that player says, because I know Freddie Freeman was older, but Freddie Freeman wanted to go to the Dodgers. You have to be able to get that.
In Atlanta.
Yeah. After Atlanta said, no, we got somebody else.
You're old.
The reason why I bring this up is because, I look at the teams that are contending right now in the National League, right? They all have this guy. And what I mean by that, what I'm referencing here is just a guy that's always good. Every month you can look at him and be like, I don't know if he's going to have an OPS of 1,000 this month, but I know he's not going to be a bad player for us. He's not going to be a black hole for us for a month in the middle of our lineup. Nolan Gorman never is going to be this player that I'm talking about. He could have an OPS in any month of 1,200. It's in play for him. And then the next month it might be 400. And you come out and at the end of the season you expect it to be hopefully closer to 800 than 700. And that's what you hope for him that he ends up being by the end of the year. But the Brewers, I mentioned Willy Adames. Here's his OPS at the end of each month, Alex. OPS for March was 845, April 807, May 765. He did have a down month in the month of June where he ended up he had an OPS of 600 for that month. Not great. You'd rather it be a lot higher than that, but you get a one-off essentially. Other than that, 885 and 979 is what his OPS was over the last couple of months, and so far in a very brief sample size in September, he's at an 810. The dude was above average by a significant margin in almost every single month so far this season. And he's not alone. Marcell Ozuna for the Braves, basically the same thing, except even better. His only down month was in March when he had 14 at-bats. That's not even real. For Bryce Harper, I understand, MVP candidate, got the massive contracts. Cardinals should have signed him. They messed up. He, every month other than in July, where he did have a bit of a downward spell, OPS of 850 or above. Ketel Marte, same thing. Lowest OPS in any month this season was in May. He had a 700 OPS. Freddie Freeman for the Dodgers, every month 800 or better in terms of his OPS. Consistency, just off the charts. The Cardinals don't have that. That's what they're lacking right now in terms of their lineup, and I don't see a player who can become it. I really don't on the roster right now. So I guess my question would be, as a follow-up to this, how do they get it? Like, what's the plan to acquire that kind of a bat? Because I don't know if Walker's going to be that. I hope he can be, but I can't expect that for next season. So if they want to be legitimate contenders next year, I think you need that, because every one of the contenders this year in the National League has it. How do they acquire it?
Get uncomfortable. And you're either paying Juan Soto money, what he's going to be making on the market this year.
Option B is what?
Option B is get uncomfortable with trading players you don't want to trade. I mean, when Juan Soto was available, we've talked about it. It wasn't just Dylan Carlson. It was Jordan Walker. It was Mason Wynn. It was Nolan Gorman. It was those types of players. We brought up Kyle Tucker's name this offseason. Like, you're going to have to pay a price that you do not want to pay, Cardinals fans do not want to pay, to acquire that player via trade. Those are the two options of getting one, unless you believe you can develop it. And if you don't believe Jordan Walker is it, I don't know if you've got anybody else that even touches the surface that has that type of potential.
So somebody on the text line said, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to be involved in the show, by the way. They said, guys, what about Alec Burleson? Does he have some of this to him? To a degree. May, he was at a 730 OPS, 820, 820, 750, and then this month, in a obviously very small sample size, 250. So he's probably the best example of what we're talking about in terms of consistency. I do question some of the ceiling there. Like, I know the Fast Lane had some conversations earlier this season of, is Alec Burleson the potential for us? Does he have the potential to be a superstar for the Cardinals? And Stalter was like, no. Like, he's a good player.
Can you be a superstar for your Splitty, though?
I'd say no.
I mean,
because I don't know if you can, if every time a left-handed pitcher starts, you say, I don't know if we can play this guy.
Like, do you guys consider Kyle Schwarber to be a superstar?
I don't.
I'd say he's a star, not a superstar.
Yeah, I think he's probably
I think superstar. I think like Harper.
I think he's probably like the fourth most important player on that Phillies team.
Because the reason I was going to bring him up is because like he's got some splits, not to the degree of what we're talking about here, but previously he had some splits in his career. Jock Peterson would probably be like, he's a star, not a superstar as well. Probably not is the answer, but every bit as importantly, I don't know that he's ever going to have the OPS of like 880 or above to get into that stratosphere. And for him, with his lack of defensive value, you probably need that kind of a bat. So I think he's a really good player and potentially a great hitter, on the verge of that at least. I don't know that he's going to be in that superstar category.
I think he's the complementary pieces that you need to win a championship. Like, you need a Burleson, you need a Mason Wynn, you need a Brendan Donovan, but you still need the guy. And I thought Nolan Arenado was going to be the guy when they acquired him, and you had like a very small sample size of him being the guy, and then it disappeared quickly. I really think you're going to have, because I don't trust this team to spend the money in free agency and getting to a bidding war, you're going to have to make a trade. You're going to have to trade multiple top prospects in your system to go acquire that player if that player becomes available.
Somebody on the text line brought this up, and we'll have plenty more time to talk about this in the offseason for sure. But T-Bone, I know what your answer is going to be on this because you're out on this player. You hate him.
No. I don't know who it is, but no.
I was going to say, who is it?
Yeah.
T-Bone hates a lot of players.
If the Toronto Blue Jays said, you know what?
Oh, no.
we're blowing it up. We're going in a different direction. We're making Vlad Guerrero Jr. available. If the Cardinals, they're not going to do this, so let's say that on the front end, but in a hypothetical world where they considered it. If the Cardinals decided, you know what, we're willing to spend the money on a star, let's go get our guy. He's 25 years old. He's putting together a season this year where his OPS is over 950. He's 70% above league average offensively. In some ways, he's been better this season than he was in 2021 when he was second in the National League, or in the American League MVP voting. He's been amazing.
He had 1 month where he was below 900, and it was a 678 in his first month.
He's this bat that we're talking about if you believe that this is real. Because last year he was not this, and the year before that he was like really good but not great. He was like Nolan Arenado from last year, kind of good. Would you consider that? Would you consider trying to put together a package that would entice Toronto to trade him here and just say, hey, that's our new first baseman every day? Because he's the bat that we're talking about.
T-Bone hates him. I would. I mean, I'd take a chance on a 25-year-old who's done it consistently at the major league level.
I don't trust Vlad Guerrero Jr. Okay. And I don't I wouldn't pay that guy because of what you just mentioned, where there's been like 2 seasons where it's like, whoa, look at that. And then there's 2 seasons where you have to question, like, why was it so bad? You know? And that's where I wouldn't pay for that. Same, like, it's different because this player that I'm about to mention, to me, has the same kind of ceiling. Maybe not win an MVP, but be in that conversation. And his down years are explainable.
Don't say who I think
because
you're
of
going to say.
injuries.
Don't.
It's Tyler O'Neill.
Oh, okay.
I would never pay that guy. You know, I would never play Vlad Guerrero Jr. And he's not very good defensively at first base. So
no, but it's first base.
Whoa!
Tell that to Jose Martinez.
Goldie and Albert is great there.
He's passable. He's passable enough that
We've done passable.
If the bat plays, I'll figure it out.
Does anybody remember Jose at first base?
That was not passable.
Vlad Guerrero Jr.
They thought it was.
Yeah, that was not a passable level.
They were like,
of
the
defense
bat plays.
Yeah, no, I would not make that move for Vlad Jr.
And I would take the downs of knowing that he's 25 years old. And, I mean, the downs are still 26 home runs, 94 RBIs, and 116 OPS.
He's a really good hitter.
It ends up being where, like, right now we've had, 3
He might be
years
Manny
of
Machado.
Arenado?
That might be what we're looking at is, like, it just took a while for him to reach his full ceiling. Because Manny Machado, when you look back at his numbers with Baltimore, they were really good. They were also inconsistent, and he didn't reach that, like, superstar status really to the degree that we all kind of expected him to until he got to San Diego. Now, key difference here, Manny Machado was also a special defensive third baseman, where what we're talking about here with Guerrero is he's a below average first baseman. So there are some key differences there. But if you look back at his numbers in Baltimore, they were not probably what you think about in your mind's eye. They were good, not great.
Yeah. The thing that concerns me with him is, like, that could be the outcome, or the other outcome is, like, you acquire him, sign him to a long-term deal, and you get, like, the Nolan Arenado kind of years where it is like, okay, you had, like, one good one every, like, 3 years. And if that's the case, he's not worth the contract he'll get.
That's Tanner Hendrickson. He's Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley. The point is, I don't know that the Cardinals have that guy in their lineup. I'm not sure that they're going to be able to get that guy in their lineup, which means might be an offseason, take a step back, do the youth movement thing, and then in 2026 push again. It's frustrating. It's not super exciting.
Will fix it all.
That's probably their best case scenario, though, going into the offseason. So hopefully they make playoffs this year. Coming up next, let's play a game of Believe It or Not. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line here on 101 ESPN.
All right, BK, so we've got the first game of the season tonight, Ravens and Chiefs, and you know what that means. It's time to put together some Ferrario parlays. You're going to go over to the Circa Sports app, you're going to pull it up, and you're going to Ferrario parlay this one. I'm taking Ravens plus the points. That's right, BK, I'm going against you, and I'm taking the over in this one. If I do that bet over on DraftKings or FanDuel, the odds, me put $10 down, I bring home $35. If I do the same thing over on my Circa Sports Illinois app, $10, BK, I'm bringing home $45.
Yeah, over at Circa, they are going to get you the most money possible. This is why we personally prefer betting with them. We believe, and they believe, you're going to find the same thing. You can go check out what they have available for you at other apps. Go check out FanDuel, go check out DraftKings. They think they are going to have the best odds possible for you over at Circa Sports in Illinois. So download the app today. Get your bets in for this football season, whether it's futures or for an individual game. That is the place to do it. Alex, can you give us the disclaimer, please?
No, I can't because it's not pulled up, BK. If you were someone, there you go.
If you or someone you don't have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Nothing like coming back from vacay.
You planned that, didn't you?
Believe it or not. Oh, I did. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
free.
Flying away on a wing and a prayer.
Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. For Believe It or Not. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are believing it or not here on 101 ESPN. All right, guys, let's start out with this. Believe it or not, there will be a team that comes out of the NFC this year for the Super Bowl that is not named the Lions or the 49ers or the Packers. One of the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl this year will not be named the Lions, the 49ers, or the Packers.
Not believe it. Because the other two teams that realistically I think a lot of people would bet on would be the Cowboys or the Eagles, and I don't trust either of those teams. So I'm going to say not believe this. It's going to be one of those three.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe this either. Because some of those teams that I would throw in this, Cowboys, don't trust them. Eagles, don't trust the guy growing flowers over there. Falcons, I mentioned, are a fantasy football darling, and that's it. And then the LA Rams, I like that team. I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they have the ceiling of a Super Bowl, so I'm not going to believe this.
I'm not going to believe this either because I think it's going to be the Packers, and I think it's going to be one of those three teams. I think when you look at the NFC, it's pretty clear who the top contenders are going into this season. I don't feel that way about the AFC. Like, if you told me the Bills end up in the Super Bowl, I could buy it. If you told me that the Jets end up in the Super Bowl, a team that I do not believe in at all, I'd buy it. Aaron Rodgers, really good defense, I could see it. I think the AFC feels much more wide open. If you told me today, BK, the Chiefs do not end the season in the Super Bowl, first of all, I'd be sad. Second of all, I'd be surprised. But third of all, I would say, okay, well, if they're not going to be participating in the Super Bowl, there's probably like 7 other teams that I could see from the AFC coming out of it. I don't feel that way about the NFC. I think it's one of 3. Alex?
Guys, believe it or not, Derrick Henry scores more touchdowns this season than he did last year. Last season, he had 17, I believe it was. Make sure I double check. No, 13.
Oh, believe it. I think he finished with the 15 plus.
I think he
He's going
scores
to
the
get
most.
a ton of touches around the goal line this year.
Does he score the most this season of running backs?
If you're just talking rushing touchdowns, I could see that. I would probably bet on him
Last
to
year,
lead
the
league.
most with Mostert with 18.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, I will believe this. I think he'll top the total, and I also like what you said. I think it's possible you see him get back to the top of that leaderboard. Like, Mostert, I don't believe is going to be up there again this year. He'll probably take a significant step back, and let's just be honest, they like A-Chain better.
Gus Edwards
I
had
was just
13
looking at that.
rushing touchdowns last year. Gus Edwards for the Baltimore Ravens, 13 rushing touchdowns last season. Yeah, 15 plus is like a no-doubter to me.
Yeah, I think he hits 20. I think he hits 20, and I think he leads the league in rushing touchdowns
it.
next year.
Guys, believe it or not, Luken Baker will be the platoon with Alec Burleson at first base next season.
Ooh, I'm not going to believe it, but I like where your head's at.
I don't think they're going to try that defensively. I think they'll stick with. I
Jose
think it's
can
going to
do
be.
it. Anybody.
I think it's going to be Burleson and
He
Goldschmidt.
couldn't do it.
Oh, you're the one who just hates first baseman, apparently. I love a good defensive first baseman. Underrated.
I think a defensive first baseman is nice to have. I don't think it is the end all be all. If you've got a bat that plays the way that like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. does, for example, if he's below average defensively at first, I'll live with it.
He's not saving Arenado or wins bacon when they throw it in the dirt.
I was just going to ask, how many errors does Mason Wynn have this season if Luken Baker's at first base?
A lot.
I mean, more, but I think it's, again, I think it's a
lot.
little
I
more.
think he has a lot. I don't think we're talking about Gold Glove if you've got him at first base.
I think that's fair. But I think Mason Wynn's good enough that he'll hit him in the chest.
I don't. Well, if you hit Luken Baker in the chest, I mean, you can't miss that.
He's a big
That's
target.
a big dude.
I'm not going to believe this either. I wonder if they're going to go Burley Goldie as the platoon.
That's what I think.
I wouldn't mind that, honestly. If long
For
as you know
$15 million,
that.
it's a huge problem.
Well, I wouldn't pay him
It's a
$15 million.
He's going to get paid $15
Nah,
million.
he's a Pujols $5 million. You know.
Okay.
I mean,
Meanwhile, the Houston
he's played
Astros call and be like, we'll
Pujols.
give you 18.
It's not like goalie had like a 700 OPS for checks notes until September. Like,
We got to place a bet on this. We got to play some kind of, because I would be absolutely shocked.
well, I guess if he
shocked
signs with the Cardinals, will overpay.
if Paul Goldschmidt gets less than $12 million this year to play.
As a Cardinal or anywhere.
Doesn't matter. When Paul Goldschmidt signs somewhere this offseason,
I'd take that bet.
I will take the over $12 million.
I'd take that bet.
A dollar over 12 million, I win. A dollar under, you win. 12 million, we push.
What if it's with the Cardinals?
Doesn't matter. I don't
That's
care who
not
he
fair.
signs
They
with.
paid broken Adam Wainer at like $20 million to
I'm
be a
saying
pitcher.
no
deferred
matter
the money,
where
though.
he signs,
Ugh.
he will sign for more than $12 million.
See, I'm not taking the pick because it's the Cardinals element. Cardinals overpay these legacy guys,
So
which
then
is
you're
ridiculous.
saying that they might end up paying him $15 million. And if they do so to be a platoon bat at first base, it's one of the worst signings just by process that they've made in the last decade.
That I would agree with.
Yeah.
But if they would pay him what his actual market value should be, then it would be a perfect signing because he's in the Pujols role. I hate this organization. Why did I hate the Chiefs?
What do you got for us today, man?
That was my believe it or not.
Okay. All right, 314-399-9646.
I
I forgot that you did that. Believe it or not, guys, the Cardinals will move on from Wilson Contreras this offseason, and the catching situation going into next year will be Herrera and Pages.
Oh, no, not believe that. They're more likely to move on from Herrera than Contreras. Contreras is going to be one of your leaders next year.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe it. I don't know how well he's valued across baseball still.
That's a fair point.
Like in free agency, the Cardinals were bidding against themselves, and they didn't know he was a catcher or an outfielder. Sorry, whatever they decided. I'll say not believe it though. I think it's probably more likely they trade either Herrera or Pages.
Believe it or not, Braden Shin will end up as your second line center and have a rebound season for the St. Louis Blues this year.
I believe it.
I really hope this.
I've been
is the case,
saying that.
man. I think this is best case scenario for them.
I think we're not giving Shen enough credit for how bad last year was overall. There was a lot that went into that. You're the new captain. Berube gets fired. Team was in shambles at times. I don't know if he's ever going to be a 70-point player again, but I think he can be a 60 to 65-point player. I think he can score 20 goals, and I think he can be your second-line center.
I'm not going to believe this. I just don't know if he's a guy that can center a second line anymore. And if that's the case, I'm not buying a bounce back year. I think best case scenario, he's either on the wing on a second line. That I think he could probably do. but I just don't think his body can hold up as a second guy. I think he probably almost is best suited in your bottom 6 at this point in his career. So not believe it.
I'll believe it, mostly out of hope and just blind faith that he's going to be better. I've said this since I got the job here. Braden Shen was my favorite player to watch early on in his Blues career. I loved the style of play, everything about like just the human being as well, beyond what he brings on the ice. I really like Braden Shen. I hope he has a bounce back season. And for the Blues, if he does become what he once was as a second line center, I think they could be a playoff team this year.
The last time Shen had success, as you would label it, as a centerman for the second line, his line mates were Ivan Barbashev and Jordan Kyrou. The following year, last season, he was playing with Brandon Saad and Alexei Toropchenko. He was playing with Brandon Saad and Jordan Kyrou. Like, he was divvying up these times. I go back to if you have an Ivan Barbashev on the line that's going to actually go after the puck and Shen doesn't have to, you could be a centerman. The problem was last year, he didn't have anybody that would do that. He was the one that had to do that.
Believe it or not, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Believe it or not, Illinois pulls off the upset this weekend and ends up in the top 25 next week.
Believe it.
Have you seen that line?
Yeah, it's only 3.
It's 5 now, but
Oh, son of a.
it
Started as 3.
5.5 now.
Oh, what the?
It keeps moving in the wrong direction for you. I was surprised when that line was 3. It is giving a lot of respect to your Illini. Do you think they legitimately can pull off the upset this weekend?
Yeah, I think they have a legitimate shot to do it. Because to me, look, I know it's Eastern, but the offense looked more explosive than I was expecting. Caden Fagan looks like Derrick Henry in the backfield. They're even, I don't know why they're doing this, but they're going to try him out as a blocker for their other running back in some situations. Yeah, that guy's going to truck linebackers. And then their wide receivers. Their wide receivers look like they can go up and high point the ball for a deep threat. And I don't think Altmaier's a great quarterback by any means, but he was putting the ball in good spots. Now, he didn't have any pressure, but he was putting the ball in good spots, giving his wide receivers a chance. If those wideouts have a chance to come down with it, I think they can. My worry, though, is their defense. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop them enough. It's going to be a shootout.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to. I wish they would, but I don't think they're going to. I think
I'm not believing this at all.
You're going to be shocked.
I think Kansas is.
You're going to shock the nation.
Yeah.
Oh, Illini football. If they do win this weekend, we said this yesterday, T-Bone, while you were out. A, we kicked you out of our fantasy league for next year. And B,
we didn't. He did.
We said, hey, if they win this game,
I don't care. I'll 3 and leave.
8 wins on the table. 9 wins?
Yeah.
You're reaching there, but it's at least something that you could consider out of this game.
And I go to when they play Michigan. If they can beat Kansas, they can beat Michigan. I was not impressed with Michigan in their first game
They have
against
quarterback
Fresno
problem.
State.
Who could have seen it coming?
Shocker.
Oregon and Michigan, both. You left that game last week saying, what's going on there? I think Oregon's going to be fine long term. A lot of it was hey, went forward on 4th down a couple of times, didn't end up getting it, a couple of turnovers. Just a weird game overall. I think they're going to be fine long term. Michigan had legitimate questions coming out of that game.
Agreed.
All right, with Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, if I eliminated for you guys the 4 teams that everybody seems to be going into the season being the most excited about, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Lions, and the 49ers. Eliminate those 4 teams, just right off the top. Which team has the highest ceiling in the NFL going into this season? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
Tuesday Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals beat the Brewers last night 3-2 as they take 2 of 3 from Milwaukee. They are off today before they start a weekend set with the Seattle Mariners tomorrow night at 7:15. But tonight here on 101 ESPN, the NFL season kicks off. You can hear the Baltimore Ravens take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, pregame coverage starting at 6:30. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Hey, each week the Fastlane and the Riz Show are battling in the Pick'em Challenge. You can go hang out with Riz and Carrie Davis tonight from 6:30 to 8:30 at Hot Shots in St. Charles. They're coming out to my neck of the woods. Come watch the NFL season kickoff tonight with 101 ESPN and point giveaways. Enjoy cold Bud Light as well. It's tonight, 6:30 to 8:30. It is at Hot Shots in St. Charles with CD and Riz, and it's all brought to you by Bud Light. Alex, one of those teams that's playing tonight, the Kansas City Chiefs, would be considered to be probably the highest ceiling team in the NFL this year. Defense, we know, is probably going to be pretty good once again, even if it takes a bit of a step back from what it was a year ago, where they were arguably the best in the league. But you've got Patrick Mahomes, and you've got better weapons for him this season. So, if I eliminated the 4 teams that are considered to be the top 4 teams in the NFL heading into the season, 2 from each conference, the Texans and the Chiefs from the AFC, and the Lions and the 49ers from the NFC, who would you then have as the top ceiling in the NFL heading into this season? Who would be that for you beyond those 4?
I mean, mine would. Are we going each conference or overall? Like, put both of them together, because in the AFC it would be the Ravens. And I think they would have the highest ceiling overall in both conferences. I do view the Baltimore Ravens as a Super Bowl serious contender because of the addition of Derrick Henry. Their defense has always been good. They now add a running game that's a legit threat that is always healthy, because the last couple of years it's been one guy out, one guy in, and it really comes down to, can Lamar Jackson keep the ball in his possession and not turn it over? But he doesn't have to scramble as much if you've got Derrick Henry now. So I would say the Baltimore Ravens, to me, have the highest ceiling in either conference.
Yeah, for me, I'm in the AFC as well, but mine is the Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh, wow.
I think they've got the highest ceiling because, we've seen Joe Burrow. He's done it before, right? You trust him as a quarterback, and he's the one guy that would scare BK as a Chiefs fan. So that there alone makes me say, okay, well, if he gets in the playoffs and he runs into the Chiefs, I wouldn't favor them, but it wouldn't shock me if they beat them. They've got the wide receiver weapons. The defense worries me. I don't know if it's Super Bowl caliber, but I could see where they've got a guy coming off the edge in Trey Hendrickson who can cause some havoc. I could see where they can win games in a shootout fashion, and I like their running back room personally. I like the Chase Brown, Zach Moss kind of combo that they got working out. So I would say the Bengals is the one for me that has the highest ceiling.
What if I told you that Tyron Smith stays healthy for the entire 2024 season? And Mike Williams stays healthy for the entire 2024 season.
Well, that won't happen.
And Aaron Rodgers returns to form.
Is he going to stay with the team for 17 weeks?
And the defense is every bit as good as it has been in recent seasons. To me, the answer to this question is the New York Jets. And I don't take any joy in saying that. I don't like this team. I hope they stink. I hope Rodgers goes out there, plays all 17 games, and looks at the end like Tom Brady looked at the end, or like Peyton Manning looked at the end, and you're like, oof, that is not the Rodgers that we were expecting. I hope for that. I do. I don't hope he gets hurt. I hope he goes out there and stinks while he's playing football.
Tell me how you really feel.
That being said, hey, man, this team has a lot of talent. And the quarterback, when he is engaged and wants to play football and is healthy, is potentially still one of the best in the league. And he's got some decent weapons, again, when healthy, in an offensive line that, when healthy, there's a lot of caveats here of health. When healthy, their offensive line is also pretty decent. They've got some talent up front this year that they did not have a year ago. So to me, my highest ceiling team is also in the AFC, and it's the Jets. We all answered with 3 different teams. All in the AFC had no head notice of what was going to be our answers on that. Man, this is going to be one hell of a battle in the AFC this year when you think about it. Chiefs, Texans, I think the Colts have a chance to be more interesting than a lot of other people do this year. The Bengals, the Ravens, 3 teams in the AFC East potentially. How many teams do you guys think realistically, as of today, can get out of the AFC and get to the Super Bowl? Like have a chance, like even if it's a 1%, a chance to get to the Super Bowl this year out of the AFC.
5. Bills, Jets, Chiefs, Ravens, Texans.
You don't think that the Bengals can?
I don't. I'm
Really?
not buying into the Bengals.
Okay. I think the Bengals could. I certainly would not be picking them, but I think they could. And then if the Colts end up having a better version of Anthony Richardson than we're currently expecting, I would put them into this category as well because it requires you to have an elite level quarterback.
Oh, I skipped the Dolphins. I'd put the Dolphins there.
I would not. That's a team that I would not have in there.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
So we're both like 6 to 7-ish is kind of what we're talking about here, depending on if you have the Dolphins, the Colts, the Bengals. Like, I think 6 or 7 teams, that's half of the conference, dude, has a real chance this year. Their fan bases believe their team has a chance to be able to get to the Super Bowl. That's crazy.
See, and it's funny, I have less, and that's because of the Mahomes effect.
Sure.
I have 4 teams, if you count Kansas City. The only ones that I think can beat Kansas City are Joe Burrow and the Bengals, because I've seen it done before. I think the Jets, because of what you said, they do have a high ceiling. If everything all clicks together, I could see where they could be a team that could do it with the defense. And then the other one for me is Houston, if everything clicks together. But like somebody like Buffalo, I don't think they could do it. Miami, I don't think they could do
I think
it.
Buffalo could.
Baltimore, I don't think Baltimore can do it. It's just the Mahomes effect. Like if they were in the NFC, like you just took Mahomes out of that Kansas City Chiefs offense, I would be listing all those teams you guys said. For me, there's like 3 that I would throw in there, and like only one of them that I would feel comfortable by saying, and that's Burrow because he's done it.
Hey, you can join Randy Carricker on Monday, September 9th from 4 to 6 o'clock at the Fit and Bar and Grill. Come see the best servers in town. They've got those beautiful, delicious, best original trashed wings in St. Louis. Plus, you can get signed up for some 101 ESPN giveaways. That's Randy Carricker at the Fit and Bar and Grill this Monday. Learn more at 101ESPN.com. Coming up next, we're going to give you a chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game, and we'll hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN. Hey, 101 ESPN is your shot this week to score a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game for the Cardinals versus the Reds. Final Bud Bash game of the season. It features a limited edition Chris Carpenter bobblehead. Shout out to Budweiser for hooking us up with these tickets. The Bud Bash tickets giveaway all season long. If you are texter number 101 with the correct answer to the following question, you are going home with the 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game. Earlier today, we gave you our NFL season predictions via March Madness rules. So we gave you a Cinderella story and a 12/5 upseed in particular. T-Bone and I had the same team for a Cinderella story, and we both thought, you know what, they probably fit more in the 12/5 upset team as a sleeper team. Who was that team that T-Bone and I both had as our Cinderella? If you have the correct answer, text number 101, you are getting that 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash game. Guys, to finish out the show today, let's go back to the St. Louis Cardinals. Got another win last night, finished out a pretty solid stretch of games against legitimate contenders. They are now 71-69 on the season. The question for you, how many wins do you think they would need in order to get into the postseason? What is the number that you think, if they get to this number of wins, they will be a playoff team this year via the third wild card?
87.
I think that's where I'm at as well.
I think 86 is going to be probably the sweet spot for the Braves, the Mets, and I think you need 87.
Yeah, that's the first number I came up to. If we think Braves 86, then that would probably be the target for me then, because you got the tiebreaker over them.
I think if the Braves go 500, they'd be at 86 wins.
Yeah. So I would say it's probably, you'd want to go one more game just to be safe, so I would say 87.
To do that, the Cardinals would need to go 16-6 the rest of the way.
Yeah.
What is that?
What percentage chance do you give the Cardinals to go 16-6 the rest of the way? 2?
0.
Above or below?
No, they can't do
Say
it.
like 1.5.
He mentioned, what was it, 5-game winning streak or something earlier in the show, and I went back. I was curious because I was like, "What is that their longest winning streak?" It is. It's 5. That happened in May.
Oh, it was May? I thought it was June.
No,
I thought it was June.
all the way back in May.
Yikes.
So you're gonna have to probably reel off a 5-game winning streak in that stretch.
Well, they've won 2 straight. Their next 3 are against Seattle, at home here in St. Louis over the weekend.
Randy
we'll preview
Rosarena.
that going into tomorrow's game. Cardinals off tonight. The NFL season is back. The Ravens versus the Chiefs pregame coverage begins here on 101 ESPN tonight at 6:30. I've got the Chiefs in this one minus the points. I've got the over as well. Alex?
I've got the Ravens plus the points.
T-Bone?
Yeah, Chiefs -3 in the under.
We'll recap that tomorrow here on the show. We will talk to you guys then at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.